to talking through all this.
Oh wow, it's Rob from the Rob Rousseau Show.
Two, hello, check. Check, two. I think I did the whole, like, the stream starts at noon at the latest thing. I think I did that, what, twice? I think I successfully followed through with that twice. And then every day since that time, I've not been able to do it. Another day in the slub mines. That's right. Clocking in again. Cool J. Thanks for the 19 months. Tier 1. Stop doing the muted gag. Okay? It's confusing to me. I'm an old guy and it's confusing. And it's interesting too, because like sometimes like I get the stream started late because I'm like busy doing something. I'm busy, like I'm working on something or I'm cleaning or like trying to do something. Not so much today. I was just sitting here. I had other things to do. There was cleaning that I could do. There's other things that I could do. And I'm just sitting here and it's like 12 and I'm like, 12:15, 12:20, and I'm just not doing it. Like I'm still making my lunch now. I did not plan this out well at all. And I'm just, I don't know. I've been tired, just slacking off. I've been tired, but even last night I went to bed at a pretty decent time. Like I actually got a decent night's sleep last night. You know, I was back early. I had my breakfast. I was ready to go. I was like, okay, now it's time. I can accomplish all these things that I've been putting off. And then I'll start my stream at a normal time. And then I don't know what happened. I went into some kind of like a trance. And then it was like 12:30. And I was like, I have to start this now. And I didn't do the things that I said I was going to do. And I'm late for the stream. So it's just nothing. I got no excuse. I have been going pretty hard, I guess, on the streaming since I left this summer, really. Since coming back from being on vacation, and I know at the end of the summer as well, my kid had his school was delayed. I had some extended time off towards the summer, and then since that time, I've been going hard. I've been going hard over here on Twitch.tv. I think I do have a cute Havana. I think you're right. I think that's it. I think I just have permanently low energy levels now. Hang on, I'm just boiling some water. I'll be right back. I'm just getting gonna have some dumplings and rice and kimchi. I got some ready to go, but that's something that I could have done prior to getting started the stream, but just incapable of doing anything today. Hello. We need your stance on the latest entries into fascism. Gooning. Man. Norm Finkelstein has really been in his element lately, hasn't he? He has really been in his element. Let's go to the tape. Let's go to the tape on this. It was actually our friend Lucid Fox that sent this to me. Originally.
Expression, I don't know if they coined it or whether it's a commonplace in your generation. The expression is gooning, Gooning.
Grooming or gooning?
Gooning, Gooning. It means basically being transfixed with porn, video porn, for like 24 or 48 hours straight. If straight's the right word there. And it struck me, now I know this is going to sound harsh, but it struck me that even though this crowd considered itself bohemian, and even though this crowd considered itself, what would you say, anti-establishment, it struck me this was exactly the crowd that would go over to fascism.
It shows how old I am. It's like I didn't even know about this slang. I think I had heard the expression gooning before, but I had no idea what that meant. So thanks for Norm Finkelstein for literally spelling it out. Gooning. This is how I'm learning about this. And I don't totally understand the analogy in the whole context. You know, he is a teacher. That's right. He is a teacher. Who's going over to fascism? I'm a little confused, honestly. I'm a little confused by the whole thing. It's gooning porn addicts. They're the ones that are going to fascism. Is that what he's referring to? Oh, I just called that a Saturday night. No, I'm not saying that, actually. That's not what I'm saying. How are we all learning about this? Like we're all in the elderly millennial crowd, we're all just confused by this. I don't get it either. No-faps are much more proto-fash in my opinion. Well, that's right. The no-faps, the incels, the volcels. What of the gooners? That's the big question. The big question on everyone's minds. And listen, I'm not taking sides. I'm not taking sides here. What did Lenin say about gooning? He said, what is to become? I think is my recollection. Gooner or barely knower? There we go. That's good. Capital Volume 3, surplus value when gooning. By the way, I'm going to try and make it to the next book club. I'm really going to try to make it to the next book club. I just got too much going on. I did start Walter Rodney. I want to make it to the next one. What's the next one? It's tomorrow. What chapter? I can do this. I can do this. What chapter do I need to be up till tomorrow? Chapter 2, but it's a big chapter. I can do this. No problem. No problem. I kind of get it, though, for people heavily involved in that kind of stuff. They're inundated with rape culture and patriarchal myths and whatnot. I don't know. I'm not inherently anti-porn or anything, but it's a huge problem, especially when youngsters are so addicted like that. I guess that makes sense, too, Sam, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we see. I guess that could be an example of people that have these extremely kind of like uh misogynistic views of like women and sex and relationships and stuff. That could possibly be either a symptom or the cause of that. You know. It's easy to read. He's a good writer. Well, yeah, I started it. So, yeah, I'm going to be good. I'll be good for tomorrow, okay? I'm going to be good. I will read the red. There it is right behind me. I will be there for the book club. This is the Rob Rousseau guarantee, which you all know is ironclad. You all know it. Never in the history of doing this show have I gone back on my word when I make an official Rob Rousseau guarantee, and this is one of those days. Okay? What book is this? It's Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. It's the book club book right now, and in my understanding as well, really, really valuable to help give context to the current moment with regards to Palestine and what is happening there and the foundation of Israel. So looking forward to that. Let me go finish making my lunch, okay? I'm gonna go finish putting my lunch together here. I will put on some kind of video situation. Okay, we did enough chit chat yesterday. We had a robust chit chat zone yesterday. Let me start us off with the video. Did we ever find that clip? I did take screenshots of it years ago, and I found the screenshots in the end. Would you believe that it was a little anticlimactic, Dakadoon? Would you believe? Would you believe that after an entire episode of trying to find that scene from Air Force One, that it ended up being like, okay, yeah, haha, okay, like that was basically the reaction for both myself and the viewers and listeners. So. Can you believe it? No, the slideshow is it.
These people just sound like they sound the same as the non-Muslims, who constantly repeat, "Why don't Muslims condemn terrorism?" Every time there's any kind.
I'll be right back, folks. I'm gonna get my lunch together and we'll watch this clip. We'll get some good discourse going. Okay, it's gonna be a great day here at TRRS.
But no matter how many times Muslims condemn and denounce terrorism, there are some people who will never hear it. They don't hear it not because it isn't being said, but because they're deaf. They have
that was anticlimactic. Okay, thank you, Dakadoon.
A deafness that's from their own bias. And the same is true for all these people who are constantly repeating, why are the Muslim countries, why are the Muslim leaders all silent? Why are the Arab countries, why are the Arab regimes saying nothing about Palestine? Why are they doing nothing? It's because you're not listening. Because you're not listening, you think nothing is being said. But it wouldn't matter, really, even if you were listening, because you have the same biased deafness that non-Muslims have with regards to Muslims condemning terrorism. You have a biased blindness, so you can't see what's going on. I mean, for whatever reason, there are people who treat their own presumptions and their own preconceived biases as if they're actual reliable sources of information. And so they automatically reject actual information if it doesn't conform with their biases. I mean, the information must be false because their biases can't possibly be wrong. Obviously, this isn't analysis. These aren't serious people. And you have people, among the Muslims, we have people who, like I said before, they seem to think that it's a sign of wisdom and intelligence, not to mention righteousness, to denigrate the Arab and Muslim rulers. So they're going to do that no matter what the rulers do. They'll denigrate them no matter what the rulers do. If the rulers do something wrong, then they will blame them without mercy. But if the rulers ever do something right, then they'll find a way to make it wrong. They'll make excuses for the ruler when they do something right. Excuses in the form of arguing that their intention was bad. Maybe they did the right thing, but their intention was bad. Or they only did the right thing against their will. They make no excuses for the bad. They make no excuses for the bad that a ruler might do, but they make excuses for the right things, for the good things. It's pathological. There are so many people who have like MBS derangement syndrome, just like they used to talk about with Trump. Bin Salman derangement syndrome, Mohammed bin Zayed derangement syndrome. And it prevents them from having any sense of objectivity or impartial understanding of the world. And in fact, anyone who is objective, they will berate them as a fanboy or an apologist. Why, they're just as dishonest, really, as Zionists, to be frank. The belief that all the leaders are terrible and hypocrites and horrible and evil and all of that, that's like doctrine to them. It's almost blasphemy for them if you acknowledge or recognize any good that the leaders might do. It's a mental malfunction in people's intellect. And of course, like I've said before, this benefits no one but the West. Getting rid of this bias blindness is part of decolonizing the collective psyche of the Muslims, in my opinion. Look, no one has done more than the Arab states since October 7th. You won't see it, you won't acknowledge it, because all you have in your head is that they're supposed to declare war on Israel. And anything short of that is just nothing to you. You don't acknowledge anything else that they might do. And all I can say about that is, alhamdulillah, that you're not in charge of a state, and inshallah, you never will be. Look, this is the real world, and the leaders are dealing with the real world as it actually is. They're navigating realities as they actually are. And they're not only trying to stop the carnage in Gaza, they're trying to make sure that it doesn't spread across the whole region. Look, Saudi Arabia has been engaged in non-stop diplomacy since October 7th, with Russia, with China, with all the BRICS nations, with Iran, Lebanon and Hezbollah, with Qatar and Hamas, Jordan, Egypt. They had a meeting with ASEAN and the GCC, which was like the first time that they ever had a meeting like that. They're consolidating a united front, and not just a united Arab front, but a united front for the entire global South, a united BRICS front. And they're shutting out the Americans. Blinken, Anthony Blinken, is getting shunned wherever he goes in the Middle East. No one wants to see him. And when he can get a meeting, it doesn't go well. It's only because of Arab mediation and negotiation and diplomacy that any aid has entered Gaza. And it's only because of their coordinated, unified stance that the U.S. had to back down from the demand that Gazans be expelled into Egypt on the pretext that expelling them to Egypt would be temporary. They didn't just backtrack from that demand, they did a 180. It's only because of Arab coordination and diplomacy that the war hasn't already spread to Lebanon and to Iran. The artillery that the U.S. Brought into the Mediterranean, that was for Iran, not for anything else. That was for Iran. And it's because of their coordination that China sent their own ships into the Mediterranean as a counterweight. Saudi Arabia is referring to the Israeli government in their official communiques as an occupation government. And the Arab states are behind the push for an international peace conference that was announced last week or a few days back by China to try to wrestle control of the resolution process to the Palestinian situation, to try to wrestle control of that away from the United States and away from the West. That's not to mention the literally billions of dollars that they've provided in aid and relief for Gaza, not just from the government, but from the populations. And that's more than anyone else. You don't have any idea what's going on. I mean, when you talk about Saudi Arabia like it's a puppet of the West, like it's a puppet of the United States, or you couldn't say anything that would more immediately expose the fact that you have no idea what's happening and that you live in a world of your own biases. And actual reality is something that you don't even bother checking on. You don't even look into it because you think that your biases and your prejudices and your preconceived notions.
Yes, I'm eating dumplings. That's right, Lodan.
Are actual reliable sources of information.
Pork and leek.
You know, all of this has a background. All of these efforts, and what has made these efforts effective, that all has a backstory. And if you've been paying attention, you would know it. It's all grown out of what I've been saying for a long time now, which is that the Gulf states, particularly Saudi Arabia and the UAE, but Qatar as well to some extent, all of these countries, all of these GCC states have been masterfully and cunningly, and yes, sometimes ruthlessly, expanding their spheres of influence across the region and beyond the region. And they've been doing it for years now. They've been building that for years. They've built partnerships, they've built alliances, they've built dependencies. They've asserted their presence and become a force to be reckoned with and a force to be respected. And again, they've done all of this right at the time when the center of the global economy is shifting to the south and to the east, at a time when the post-World War II world order is being dismantled. They've anticipated the repercussions of that shift, and they've positioned themselves accordingly. You can like it or not, you can recognize it or not, you can acknowledge it or not, it doesn't matter. That's what's happening. And it has made a significant difference, and it is making a significant difference. Had they not done what they've done over the past decade or so, I mean, the UAE has been doing it for longer. They've been building this for longer, but let's just say for the last decade, if they had not done what they've done, you would not see Egypt today standing up to America. You wouldn't see Jordan standing up to America. You wouldn't see the U.S. Secretary of State getting doors slammed in his face all across the Middle East, everywhere he goes. You would see complete and total capitulation to U.S. and Israeli demands. You would see a revival of the coalition of the willing, all lined up to bomb Gaza like it was Baghdad in 2003. And you'd probably already be seeing Tehran being blasted to pieces in another shock and awe campaign. But you see, one of the...
What do we think, folks? Do we think this is a fair assessment about what the Arab states are doing right now? I think I agree with the idea that they're not just acting like loyal vassal states or client states. The point about Blinken trying to go and meet with all these Arab leaders and getting doors slammed in his face, like, I think that's all an important point. At the same time, you've got like South American leaders pulling back their diplomats, their ambassadors, their diplomatic personnel closing embassies. We've got that happening in Latin America. I agree that these Arab states haven't been fully like compliant client states, but can they be doing more? KSA and Jordan are actively shooting down rockets and drones from Yemen. Yeah, they couldn't meet with Blinken because their local populations would have dragged their bodies into the streets. Like, this is it. It's like I agree that they haven't been like totally compliant, but yeah, they're not in perfect lockstep with the US. Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon are in extremely precarious positions domestically right now. It is really interesting, this dynamic of these Arab states that have historically their partnerships and alliances with Israel have allowed Israel to like exist thus far. These kind of alliances that have been stitched together. But now they're in this incredibly precarious positions when their own population are seeing the carnage and are demanding that they do more. So they're trying to like operate kind of from that position. So it's interesting. Like they probably could be doing more, but it's true that they're not completely silent and compliant right now.
The things that they've done in the process of this building their or expanding their sphere of influence was to win over the Western owners and controllers of global financialized capital, the OCGFC. Mohammed bin Salman has built a relationship with BlackRock. And I believe that he has sold them on his vision for the Middle East. They've done a cost-benefit analysis, and they've concluded that Israel's old traditional role as a source of disruption and instability in the region is not viable anymore. It was only ever really lucrative for a handful of economic interests, and it only really worked in the context of the previous global order, the post-World War II order, which is, as I said, being dismantled. So in my opinion, the OCGFC are done with Zionism. And if the OCGFC are done with Zionism, then it means Zionism is done. I mean, when bin Salman said that the Middle East is going to be the new Europe, it's because Europe is already irrelevant. And there has to be some kind of Europe in this new world, in this new world where the center of gravity for the global economy is no longer in the West. There has to be some replacement for Europe, for Europe's role. And the GCC has the money. I mean, in just their sovereign wealth funds, the GCC has more than 7 times the entire GDP of the whole EU. And just the GCC countries, their GDP is more than 3 times the size of the EU GDP. So they have the money, and they have the will, and they have the vision to develop the Middle East into a thriving, prosperous, stable, and managerial region for the new global economy. And they're in a position, uniquely, to mediate the competing interests between the OCGFC, the Western OCGFC, and China and Russia, which is something that BlackRock cannot do on their own because of the way that Russia and the way that China manage their economies. There needs to be a third party. So they built all this. They've navigated the power dynamics in such a way that they've been able to build, as I've said before, a kind of empire from soft power, an empire of soft power. And yes, part of that was normalizing with Israel by the UAE, and part of that was gestures towards normalization by Saudi Arabia. All of it was a part of that.
This post with the right, it makes anything you say sound very smart. He's good at that. This guy, he does a lot of this too.
If you were really paying attention, you would recognize that bin Salman was just teasing the possibility of normalization, and he wasn't actually serious about normalizing.
Whatever possibility there was for that is gone now.
It was the right time to tease the idea as a way of moving Israel into a more useful, advantageous position for Saudi Arabia. Because look, Netanyahu he's not going to survive. Hardline Zionist fanatics are not going to survive. They're obsolete. Their software can't be updated. I mean, to get hardline Zionists on board with the new plan would be like trying to install an Android operating system into a beeper. They have to go. You're going to see a new government in Israel after all of this, maybe under a Benny Gantz or someone else, someone who's smart enough and rational enough and who can discern which way the wind is blowing to draw down the crazy Zionist, radical, genocidal fantasies that Netanyahu has stupidly and cynically made his political bread and butter. And there's going to be a peace process. and there will be final status negotiations. But they're going to be held under the auspices of the Global South, under the auspices of BRICS. It will be an international initiative, not a U.S.-led sham of a peace process. And Israel won't be able to bully and dominate that process the way they did last time. And just watch, it won't be long before Jordan severs its ties with Israel, before their peace agreements with Israel are nullified. And don't be surprised if the same thing is going to happen with Egypt.
Yeah, this seems to be my thought as well, Red Scary. They're not the idea that they're close to like backing down doesn't seem to jive with like what their actual statements and their actions are right now. This guy has a channel called Middle Nation, which we've interesting guy, kind of a conservative Muslim, but has some really interesting analysis of Middle East issues that I think is worth definitely taking a look at and talking about. Like Netanyahu is done, but not the right wing in Israel. And yeah, like, but I've been thinking Netanyahu was done for years now. Like I thought he was done like 3 years ago. Like he just continues somehow this kind of like whole shambolic career. Like I thought he was supposed to be like out of power and probably swirling the drain and close to prison like years ago.
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Hello, Benny. Thank you for the raid, Benny. I appreciate it. Hello. How was the Benny stream today? I hope it was good. Welcome. It's me, Rob. It's nice to see you. His whole pitch is that he keeps them safe, and according to their own propaganda, Hamas has killed 1,400 Israelis in a day. I mean, yeah, there's certainly a lot of, like, in terms of, like, the polling, you've got the Haaretz editorial staff calling for his ouster. Sorry, Sinchel, I had to dive right into content. I had to dive right into serious business. But that's the thing, like, so there's a lot of people in Israel, like even in Israel, that want him gone. Of course, he's got these like kind of possibility of like corruption charges. Like I think everyone recognizes that he's this totally corrupt gangster. But they're also like, from you hear from their own statements, they are planning for like a long engagement here. They're like, this is it. Like we're really going for it. We're really going to try and defeat Hamas, whatever that means. And like, it seems to me like that's, as long as that war is going on, he's going to be able to kind of stretch that into infinity. You know, maybe I'm wrong. Like but like he could be done. It's possible. But I remember we've been talking about this for a while now, and he somehow continues to survive. Hamas has done quite a bit of damage to the IDF this time. Well, I mean, we're going to get into that as well, but I don't know if you folks saw the like Israel released a thing of like all the names of the victims of October 7th, and it's crazy to zoom in on it and see how many of them are like sergeant, major, lieutenant. Like they kept all the military titles on there, and it's like a huge percentage. It's maybe not huge. It is a large percentage of the people that are being held up as the innocent victims of Hamas terror. It's like a lot of military people, IDF people. It is huge. And as we talk about with this stuff, like I don't ever want to deny that like innocent people didn't die. You know, it's not about, I think, denying that. It's about recognizing that when innocent people die as part of this kind of like cycle of colonialist violence, the fault of that is the Israeli government. The fault of that is the colonizers, you know, as we've talked about with slave uprisings, with the Viet Cong, with, you know, Haiti, with the Nat Turner slave rebellion, with the Indian mutineers. Like, it's always kind of the same thing. It's not that violence towards innocent people doesn't happen, but I blame the violence on the colonial occupiers. But is setting that aside, again, not denying that innocent people didn't die, but when you look at that the list of names of people that were killed, a large number of those people are in the IDF. They're literally, we can get into debates about like who counts as a civilian and who doesn't. Obviously, we've been having that debate, we've been having that conversation, but I think it's safe to say that like if you're in a colonial army, whether you were conscripted or not, and you're keeping 2 million people in a concentration camp, well, that's not an innocent civilian. I think we can agree on that. Anyway, we'll continue this video here. We can look at that infographic though in a little bit.
And the purpose of that is to nullify those agreements so that new agreements can be made with new conditions, because those old agreements were made under the gun. They were made under duress. And the new agreements will be made from a better and stronger bargaining position. And again, that's being made possible by all of these efforts by the Arab states, by the GCC states, the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar. All of the efforts that they've made over the last several years to build their sphere of influence. That's going to enable those old agreements to be nullified and new agreements to be made in a more advantageous manner. You know, when Hassan Nasrallah gave his speech last Friday,
and we've asked about the filter or whatever that's on these videos before. It seems like it's probably like a Zoom window that's blown up full screen and then has some kind of like upscaling filter being applied to it. That's what it seems like to me.
I would say that the text of that speech was cleared by Riyadh and Moscow. No one's going to let Hassan Nasrallah just wing it at a time like this. And that whole speech was against escalation. It was against the spreading of the conflict, trying to avoid spreading of the conflict. You know, Russia and Saudi Arabia have been actively engaging in communication and diplomacy with Iran.
I've seen some pretty base videos of Popular Front of Hamas fighting IOF tanks. Well, and people are saying too, like, well, you shouldn't be sharing that footage. You know, it's like we're celebrating. They're releasing these videos of like these resistance fighters jump no scoping these like invading Israeli tanks, and you're sharing that and you think it's cool and you're laughing, and it's like, yeah, it is pretty cool when we see the like level of violence and destruction that we're seeing from this relentless bombing campaign on Gaza. Yeah, it's not surprising that people are sharing that kind of footage and celebrating it. The man running up to a fucking tank and putting a rocket on it, then blowing it up with an RPG. Like, we're supposed to say that and be like, tut tut. Tut tut. That's not, why have you tried debating the tanks? Like, I don't know. Like, what are people supposed to do? Yeah, I think it's cool when you see people like blowing up these like $100 billion tanks that are being supplied to this like incredibly well-funded and well-equipped army, and people that are emerging from the rubble of the city that's being absolutely leveled by this relentless bombing campaign and destroying these vastly, these armored and incredibly expensive military hardware. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Sorry. And like people have said too, it's like, well, you know, these, when they try to do the IDF, well, there's a conscript army. There's these naive teenagers being conscripted. And I get it. You know, we've looked at many of these naive teenagers, or they're not naive because they choose not to join the IDF and go to jail instead, which many people do in Israel very bravely. And also, you know what? If you're conscripted into a colonial, like, occupying army and you roll into Gaza in a tank, my sympathy is low for whatever's going to happen to you in that situation. And I would feel the same way about a 19-year-old kid being drafted to go to like My Lai in Vietnam, or like go in the jungles of Vietnam, and burning villages and like shooting fishermen and stuff.
P.
Thank you, Effusive Stoic, for 24 months. 24 months of Tier 1. Thank you, Effusive Stoic. Enjoy the brand new elite and exclusive golden sub badge.
I wouldn't be surprised if when the Houthis launch drones and missiles against Israel, it's precisely for the purpose of letting Saudi Arabia shoot them down. Now, I don't mean that the Houthis know that, but it wouldn't surprise me if Iran and Saudi Arabia know that that's why those drones and missiles are launched, precisely to get shot down. And the point is to display and prove their commitment, Saudi Arabia's commitment, to de-escalation.
That tank was at a music festival for peace.
Strategic right now, and the stakes are incredibly high. Now, the horrible thing, obviously, the unbearable thing, is that in all of this, while all of these efforts are being made and while all of these coordinated plans are being put into motion, Gazans are being killed.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Thank you, narrator. That's right. On this channel, we salute our brave Taylor Swift fan account. That's right. There are options. Like I said before, I understand that that's a difficult situation to be in. It's a difficult position to be in. But yeah, if you're going to get in a tank and roll into Gaza, which I don't think anyone is being conscripted into the IDF and is being put into a tank unit going into Gaza. I don't know if that is true. But yeah, if you're part of a colonial occupying army and you're joining a ground invasion during this like unprecedented level of extreme violence, my sympathy is low for whatever's going to happen.
And this is agonizing for anyone with a heart, for anyone with natural human feeling. So we all feel that the leaders, whatever they're doing, it isn't enough because it hasn't stopped the killing. But the fact of the matter is that they are doing a lot. And people everywhere are doing a lot. Obviously, none of us can be satisfied. And we have to continue to do as much as we can. But I don't think that
Hello, Kijiji.
Denigrating the Muslim and Arab rulers is helpful or fair. And it actually only undermines the efforts that they are making. The future of the global South, the future of the world, in fact, it's not hyperbole to say it, the future of the world hinges on Gaza. The worldwide protest against Zionist colonialist brutality is developing into a worldwide rejection of Western imperialism, and particularly Western corporate imperialism, which is the main manifestation of imperialism in the world today. People everywhere are focusing their activism, their resistance, and their opposition to Israel. They're focusing that activism on Western private sector entities like Starbucks or McDonald's or Coca-Cola or what have you. They're boycotting Western companies and brands.
They could do more than they are, but they can't do as much as people in the West want them to do. And we can apply that same thing to China as well, right? We've talked about how we would all like for China to be doing way more. They're not doing nothing. They're certainly taking better stances on this than our countries, any country in the West. They're framing the whole conflict in being rooted in the decades-long oppression of Palestinian people. You know? But yeah, probably they're not going to go out there and start like, you know, arming groups that are waging wars against like U.S. client states. So they're just not going to start doing that. Yeah, at least they're not protecting Israel with vetoes, for sure. No, I think they're very clearly taking a strong stance. Is it enough? Like we can debate that. We can argue that. They're certainly not taking this like conciliatory pro-Western stance. So that's for sure.
That are associated with Israel and associated with support for Zionism. They're doing this more than focusing on governments. And it's sending a message to the OCGFC, to the owners and controllers of global financialized capital. It's sending them a message that will further cement for them in their minds that the pivot to the global south cannot be
I agree,
overtly
but it's not up to me.
And imperialistic in nature, and imperialistic in tone and in character. People are turning away from those Western companies and those Western brands, and in the process, they're boosting their local companies. They're boosting their local shops and cafes and restaurants, their local products, and their local manufacturers. They are exercising from their domestic economies those predatory Western corporations. Wallahi, Gaza is liberating the entire global south from Western supremacy. And inshallah, bi'idhnillah, the global south, by means of their protest and opposition, will help to liberate Gaza from that same Western supremacy once and for all.
This news is from...
Is this from today? I think so. 2 hours ago. Yeah, I mean, some interesting and insightful analysis there. I do appreciate. I can't remember the guy's name. Kind of rude of me. Shahid Bolson. Interesting analysis. Yeah, I think like we were saying, I don't know if they're quite as close to a peace process as he kind of is laying out. I don't know if the Arab states could be doing more. I feel like they probably could. Like we pointed out, the difference between what Latin America is starting to do, withdrawing ambassadors and closing embassies and stuff. The Arab states are not really doing that. We've seen like people like Ali Abunimah on Electronic Intifada complaining about that as well. So I think a lot of that is justified. So yeah, definitely maybe a little over like optimistic, this kind of an analysis. The whole conflict shows the peace process is completely dead. Yeah, and I agree that I think they're more likely to double down than kind of admit defeat or anything like that. Like it seems like the statements that they're making, as much as they're backing themselves into a corner and creating this whole, like, I think Will Menneker referred to it as a murder-suicide pact with its Western backers. It does not seem like there's any appetite in Israeli leadership to start like backing down now. None of these Arab states can afford to do it, as their decades of allegiance and intelligence community depend on Israel, especially Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia. The Turks admire the Zionist project at the heart of Turkish intelligence as a long-term plan for pan-Turkism. Yeah, well, I think that's what we were saying, right? A lot of the leadership of these places are in a crazy position right now because their people are demanding that they completely reject this, that they withdraw whatever support that they've shown for Israel and for the Zionist project, that they stop facilitating this in any way. They have decades of like being part of this process that have made that borderline impossible to do. So they've got to try to find some line where they're not being like violently overthrown by the people in their nations, while still kind of like allowing themselves to have some kind of wiggle room. Here's that Here's that post I was talking about. These are the names of the 1,400 plus victims brutally murdered by Hamas terrorists 1 month ago today. Some of the victims have still not been identified. Remember their names. And it's really amazing, like when you zoom into some of these. This person was only like doing it partially. But it's just such a great example of like exactly what we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. Who counts as a civilian and doesn't, and how no one in Gaza is allowed to be a civilian. Not kids, not nurses, doctors, journalists, ambulance drivers. None of them are civilians. And the people in Israeli leadership and even in the United States government leadership are saying this. No, they're not civilians. You know, they're one step away from putting on a suicide vest, even if they're kids. Hamas is under the hospitals. Like we saw that horrible, deranged, like racist cartoon in the Washington Post a couple days ago, which is literally like Der Stürmer level cartoonish racism, showing a Hamas guy with like surrounded with like kids like taped to him as literal human shields. So it's crazy how no one gets this like idea of being a civilian. No one no Palestinian is entitled to that. No one in Gaza, and not even people in the West Bank, which have nothing to do with Hamas. Which the violence in the West Bank right now should prove once and for all that like nothing that Israel is doing right now has anything to do with Hamas, and it's all about ethnically cleansing the land and completing their ultimate Zionist project of a state Israel from the river to the sea that they control entirely, and which is ethnically cleansed and purged of populations that they don't want, which makes all the conversation about the fucking slogan extra ridiculous. So no one gets painted with that civilian brush, and in Israel everyone gets painted with civilian brush, even people in the IDF. Everyone's a civilian, you know? And I don't want to take this like line that like no one is a civilian. Like there's people that grew up there, there's kids, there's people that I think are innocent in that process. But it's crazy how everyone gets painted with that brush of being a civilian. Like you saw the thing of a few weeks ago of like these two beautiful IDF officers were making dance TikToks in their army base before they were brutally murdered. And it's like they're in the colonial occupying army of the country that has been bombing and brutalizing and imprisoning and torturing Palestinians for decades and decades. They're in the army on a military base, and they still get talked about like they're innocent civilians. So no one in Gaza gets shielded by that protection of being a civilian, and everyone in Israel does, even people in the IDF, as you can see from this. Master Sergeant. In the show, a Master Sergeant, Sergeant Major, Advanced Staff. Like, look at all this. Sergeant Major, Boaz Abraham, Master Sergeant, Radav Amikam, Sergeant Major. Ram Negbi, Sergeant, Ophir Shoshani Lior Asilin, Master Sergeant. Like, there's so many. And I'm not saying that like that's every single person that died or that innocent people haven't died. In case I'm very conscious about people paying attention to the kind of things that I say about this and scrubbing my streams and trying to accuse me of all kinds of stuff. So I want to make clear, I don't think that every single victim of this kind of violence is just like deserved it or had it coming. I don't believe that, and I know people in this chat don't believe that either. But I do think we need to make a distinction between like who's an actual civilian here and who is literally a member of an occupying army, and ask ourselves why these distinctions are not made, why no Palestinian counts as being a civilian, and why every single person in Israel, whether they're in the IDF or whether they're one of these like armed settler groups that are committing acts of terrorism on the West Bank, why they are all civilians and no one in Palestine, no one in Gaza is a civilian. This innocent Merkava gunner who was making TikToks before being horrifically blown up by a no-scope 360 RPG. Like, we've got to look at this. I think I meant to watch this the other day and didn't. Oh man, I got a lot of stuff to look at here. Oh man, now I can't find it. We got more scrolling. More scrolling, everyone's favorite. Literally all the kibbutz footage is Hamas shooting security guards and armed residents. I've seen maybe a couple unarmed people shot, but it's weird. There isn't a ton of video. And I know they're like, Gal Gadot is like hosting a fucking screening of this film that they've now taken weeks to like get together. Oh, why can I not find it now? Come on. She is literally IDF. If she cares so much about these hostages, maybe she should tell her friends in the IDF to stop fucking dropping bombs on these hostages. Yeah, these guys. These are some of the innocent civilians that were killed. The beautiful innocent civilians that were tragically murdered.
Where are you from?
I'm from Israel.
Are you a IDF soldier?
Yes, I am.
Didn't the IDF, they bombed Gaza and they
Yeah, of course.
and they killed hundreds of children?
I don't know about it, okay? I just know that we bombed them because they bombed us, okay? And
What about before that? Why did they bomb you guys?
I don't know why, okay? Maybe something like a lot of years ago, but...
You don't know the information? Before Israel, 1948, it was Palestine.
Yeah.
No, it's called Israel.
No, it was called Palestine before 1948.
Maybe it is.
And it still is. Right now, it's occupied Palestine, yes.
Yeah.
I wish IDF more children, okay? And I wish the IDF will find you and kill you, okay?
Why?
Okay.
No, I don't know.
It's only Israel, no Palestine. And if you talk it like again, I will f you in your okay? Motherfucker.
Wait, does he kill innocent Palestinians?
I kill every Palestinian you see.
So every Palestinian you see, you kill?
Every Palestinian you see, I just...
Where are you from?
And turns out those ended up being two of the innocent victims. Two of the innocent victims of the relentless violence that we've seen. Very unfortunate. The poster childs of morality, that's right. This is what I mean, you know, it's like how this lens of being an innocent civilian gets applied to every single person on one side and no one on the other side. Like, it's really incredible. Not even infants. I mean, that's the whole thing about this fucked up, like, Washington Post piece, like, this is in the Washington Post, this image. Like, it's quite literally like Der Stürmer level cartoonish dehumanization and racism. It's honestly shocking. Like, I know it's a low bar. We shouldn't be surprised at the kind of thing we see in like mainstream corporate media. This is in the Washington Post. And just this whole idea that like if this is like the cartoonish version of reality that you believe, that Hamas is just hiding behind babies and women and just and then like you believe every word of that, like there is still an army choosing to drop the bombs and kill those little kids and women and human shields anyways, and the onus is on them. Even if this were an accurate representation of reality, which it is obviously not, you're still saying, and that makes it okay. That's why we're killing all these babies, because this is what they're doing. Like, you're still making an excuse or a justification for killing innocent people, and especially children, with this kind of justification. How is that supposed to be better? If it was a shield that would actually protect them, but Israel doesn't care. Same thing about these hostages. You're seeing Gal Gadot out there being like, release the hostages. She's hosting this whole propaganda film now about the horrible, horrific footage that they're showing. All the friendly journalists are getting shown that footage. Like this whole idea that like, oh, if they just release the hostages, this is just going to stop. Does anyone actually believe that? No one believes that. And if Israel actually cared about these hostages, they wouldn't be repeatedly dropping bombs on them. They wouldn't be ignoring what these hostages' own families are saying a lot of the time, begging and pleading with Netanyahu to stop using them to justify this like mass bombing campaign and to release the Palestinians that they have in their jails, to do some kind of exchange. That's what the actual families are doing. If anyone actually cared about that, they wouldn't be focusing on like posters, like bullshit posters being torn down. They would be criticizing the Israeli government for dropping bombs on the neighborhoods where they know that these hostages are meant to be. No, I did not see that, Lodan. I did not see that. Israel started bombing on day one. Exactly. Like, if you're actually concerned about that, perhaps you can, like, you know, talk to them. Oh, I actually did see this. But yeah, we can take a look at that, Lodan. I did see this.
Kill everybody.
This is the basic question, you know? Again, in the same way that there's this asymmetry between who's a civilian and who's not, is who do you condemn? Like, everyone's got to condemn Hamas, and everyone's got to make sure that so you don't get fucking arrested or whatever now, because that's where we're at now. But like, do you have to condemn the IDF, whose crimes are significantly worse by every conceivable metric? Does anyone have to condemn Israel or the IDF for causing all of this in the first place? Through decades of theft and lies and exploitation and murder? No one ever has to do this.
Hamas. Do I condemn Hamas is the question, right? Yeah. No, I don't condemn Hamas. I want them to kill everybody. Well, is that the soundbite you wanted? Death to America! Of course I condemn it. I condemn the violence on both sides. Right. So I can't believe, I've seen this on TikTok. I can't believe you actually started with, do you condemn Hamas? What do you think? Do you think I'm Hamas?
Right, look, you're not on TikTok now. I know TikTok. You're obviously, you know.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Do you condemn Israel?
I'm condemning people who...
Do you condemn Israel is the question.
Hang on a second. You're here to answer the questions.
Yeah, sure, but if you're going to ask silly questions, I can ask them too.
And I didn't ask silly questions. I'm glad to hear that you have condemned Hamas.
What did you expect me to say?
Hamas.
Well, of course I condemn the death of innocents. Release the hostages, but also release the Palestinian hostages. 15,000 of them. Actually, sorry, my bad. There's 2 million of them in Gaza and another 3 million in the West Bank. If we want to talk
condemn
about
Israel.
How dare you insinuate that I'm a terrorist? Because that's what you're trying to do.
I'm not doing anything.
What do you mean by do you condemn Israel? Do you condemn Hamas?
You are talking, you know, on your own.
That is so unfair.
No, nothing is unfair.
People in my family are dying, and if you are...
Both sides they are, and what we need to do, in a sensible way, is how do we resolve this? How do we resolve this matter? And when you have people like the ex-Hamas foreign secretary,
yeah, I agree, Red Scary. I agree.
Israel, and we want to bring more October the 7th attacks.
I think that's
How
terrible.
do we therefore get to peace and a solution?
With all due respect, I know it's your show, but I'm not going to let you just gloss over what you just tried to do.
I'm not glossing over anything.
May I speak without being interrupted, please?
Yes, and you have for a while.
So what you've just done is start off just like every other racist media publication. This is supposed to be an accredited media source. You're interrupting me again. Can I speak?
Please,
May I speak? May I speak?
Yes, you can.
Okay, this is supposed
you are.
This is supposed to be an accredited media source, right?
It is.
Okay, so have you seen how you guys report on the protests? Have you seen it? What you type in, everyone at home, type in GB News Palestine. Tell me if it's not the most sensationalistic coverage of the protests that you've ever seen in your life. The only things these guys are doing is trying to get clicks, and they're trying to fool you and hoodwink you into thinking that we're animals and that we're racist and we support terrorist organisations.
Look, the only person who wants clicks is you, because you do, as you said.
Yeah, I do want clicks.
Exactly.
Do you know why? Do you know why? Because there is unfair representation by the British media. Check out GB News Palestine. It's racism at its core.
How dare you think there is extremism in some of your groups?
Of course. My groups? What do you mean by my groups? Arabs, Muslims, content creators?
In the ones that have taken the streets. Listen. In 100,000 in the last weekend.
Of course there are. There is extremism in every facet of the world. If someone headbutted a police officer at the football, should we ban football for the weekend? Should we call all people that go to the football games violence and thugs? No, we shouldn't. So what you've done is disingenuous. You started with, do you condemn Hamas? For what reason? To frame the conversation in a light that I am sympathetic with terrorists. Did you know that my family are dying in this conflict? So let me ask you a question. Do you condemn Israel? Do you condemn Israel? You asked me if I condemn Palestine, right? Because I'm a terrorist sympathiser. Do you condemn Israel for what they're doing?
I believe Israel has the right to defend itself.
Do you condemn them?
Actions
okay, but do you condemn them for killing innocents? Be fair here. Esther, I've been fair. Be fair. Do you condemn them for killing innocents?
I'm saying the only way forward is to make sure we don't have the terrorist attacks that we did. And I'm asking you, because you're taking to
There's
the
been
streets,
terrorist attacks for
and
decades.
I'm asking you, the streets of the UK, and I'm asking...
IDF's the most well-funded terrorist organization there is.
Both sides, how are we going to do it? Give us your answer.
The first thing we'll do is we'll have to sack off any media publications that pretend that they're trying to speak the truth. But in actual fact, that what they want to do is divide us. I think you're amazing, Esther. I really do. You're actually one of the best at GB News. I'm sorry if I've seemed aggressive. My family are dying. And when you start off with a question like that, what that does is frame the conversation in a light that I'm a bad person. And you know it. Don't be disingenuous. You're too smart.
No, listen, my final question to you. When Hamas did those strikes on the 7th of October, did they know, and they must have realised, what the retaliation was going to be by Israel?
So Hamas?
No, I'm asking about the incident, and you're here to talk about...
Maybe they should have protested peacefully. They could have done some kind of great march. What about a non-violent great march?
Put Hamas
up to the prison fence.
Lives of
Why didn't they do that?
And Palestinians at risk.
Why not some kind of boycott
I
campaign?
think they have done that. But would you also agree? See, look how I answer your questions. Now, please offer me the same thing. Just answer the question. What about what Israel are doing? Would you say that they've put the lives of Israelis and Jews all over the world by ethnically cleansing, by kicking people out of their homes, by and you know this is a fact, continuously lying online?
Hang on, please don't put things as fact, continuously lying
so
online.
So is it not, is it not a...
What they've done is
this is so unfair.
Themselves.
This is so unfair. It is unfair because what you're doing...
It's not unfair,
what you're doing,
but I want to thank you for coming in.
Of course you do. All right, have a nice day, guys. Thank you for letting me come in. I don't get to answer a bloody question. She gets to lambast me with bullshit and paint me as a terrorist. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Hang on.
Where's the free media? Is this media?
You're doing
Let me get out. I take the mic off. Have a nice day. Have a nice day.
You're doing a wonderful job.
I'm acting. People are dying, and I'm acting, apparently. Thank you, Esther. Thank you for having me on your show. Barely answering any of my questions. Get this mic off me, bro. This is racism 101. Have a nice day, Esther.
You've done... Thank you for coming on the show. It's a pity about his language. It's a pity that he couldn't keep his cool.
He's fucking... These goddamn people. God damn. It's a pity. Pity about the 4,000 dead children, old chap. Like, Jesus. Yeah. No, but I think that's from moment one. That's been my main takeaway from all this kind of demands for condemnation. You know, condemn the IDF. If you're gonna make that demand of someone, and that's it. It's like when someone asks me if I condemn, no. As I've been saying for weeks now, you know, when people escape a concentration camp, I blame whatever happens after that point. I blame the people that put them in the concentration camp to begin with. That's why I thought it was really valuable, that Norman Finkelstein clip where he talked about the Nat Turner slave uprising and specifically what abolitionists were saying at that time about the Nat Turner slave uprising, in which families and kids and innocent people were killed. It was horrible, horrible violence. And what the abolitionists of the time said was, this is your fault. They said they didn't condemn Nat Turner. They didn't condemn slave uprisings. They were saying this violence is horrible and disgusting, and we told you this was going to happen. This is your fault. This is the fault of the slave owners. This is the fault of the people that have propped up the institution of slavery. You made this happen. We've been telling you that this is exactly what was going to happen, and now it's happening. And it's genuinely shocking, I think, this level of kind of like McCarthyism now that we're getting into. I really only think this is just beginning too. Like all the debating about a slogan, all the debating about from the river to the sea, which has been around for decades, and only in the last couple of weeks, organizations like the ADL are suggesting that it's now anti-Semitic to say this. Pretty soon it's going to be anti-Semitic to wear a kufi or have a Palestinian flag or say free Palestine, or so all the slogans. Eventually it's all going to be now funneled into this like hate speech category. Like this is absolutely insane. The Calgary police. No, it's totally manufactured, and it's been like 2 weeks of debate and discourse about saying the words from the river to the sea, while a nonstop stream of bombs is getting dropped on Gaza. Hundreds more kids killed every single day. Over 4,000 children died in the last month in this bombing campaign. And it's been like 2 weeks of this completely manufactured outrage about a slogan from the river to the sea and its possible genocidal underpinnings, which is supposed to be the main thing that we're focusing on right now, and not the actual mass murder that's going on. Yeah, but Slava Ukraini, of course, in using these rehabilitating like the UPA flag or those kind of slogans of Nazi adjacent groups that helped carry out the Holocaust and commit brutal mass murders of Jews. Of course, that is okay. But saying from the river to the sea, not okay. And as we keep saying as well, Netanyahu and the right-wing, like autocratic, authoritarian, genocidal leadership in Israel right now, they believe in, it's like it damages a two-state solution when you say this. It takes us farther away from the two-state solution. Netanyahu and the people that we're sending nonstop flows of arms and money to right now, they don't believe in a two-state solution. They haven't believed in a two-state solution for quite some time. It's even in their charter, the Likud charter, which we can look at. They believe, though, in one state, Israel, from the river to the sea, that they control 100%. So we have to ignore that. We have to ignore the actual violence that's going on. And we focus weeks of discourse, dozens of articles now, and back and forth dialogue about a slogan and its possible genocidal underpinnings that make people feel unsafe. People that live in like fucking Brooklyn makes them feel really unsafe. College professors and people in the media and like people in politics. it makes them feel very unsafe. They actually want more than from the river to the sea. That's the ultimate irony. But check this out. Like, if anyone should be incredibly disturbed by this, like, I know the free speech brigade and the cancel culture bros are not exactly ideologically consistent. You would think maybe they would take a look at this right now and have something to say about it. Following the protest on Sunday, November 5th, 2023, after consultation with the CPS hate crime coordinator, one man has been charged with causing a disturbance and hate motivation has been applied to the charge. Ahead of the protest, our diversity resource team and our public safety unit met with members of both groups involved in the protest to ensure the safety of the participants. Oh, they're so helpful. Thank you. The public and our police officers to discuss some of the language and signage observed at past protests. During the protests, a man took to the stage to speak to the large crowd in attendance. Through amplification and public address system, he acknowledged this conversation with police. He then proceeded to repeatedly use an anti-Semitic phrase while encouraging the crowd to follow along. Hate speech, as defined in the criminal code, is complex and several contextual factors must be considered before charges can be laid. We work closely with the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service to review any potential hate crime behavior at the protest to determine if those thresholds have been met. And, of course, turning off the replies. You think that's ChatGPT? It certainly wouldn't surprise me. Webster's dictionary defines hate speech. But, like, so what do we have now? We have this charge now over now a slogan which has been used for decades, which is now apparently anti-Semitic hate speech. You had women being charged in England for wearing images of paragliders. In addition to all the people that have lost jobs and opportunities, whether they're part of like college or university student groups or whatever, for just like standing with Palestinians or blaming violence on apartheid and the occupation. Yeah, and for sure, they don't even say what the phrase is. Hour one of those damn rallies had Jewish leaders also saying "from the river to the sea," and now it's anti-Semitic. I wonder if maybe that slogan was more impactful than they wanted. And again, this slogan is not new. It's not this new thing. It's been around for decades. Like, if thinking Palestinians have rights makes me an anti-Semite to you, then I guess what I'm not going to argue with you about it. I mean, it's interesting, right? It's like who gets colored with this idea of who's a civilian and who's not, who's allowed to commit violence and who's not, who counts as being Jewish and who doesn't. Of course, the Jewish people that are part of every single one of these protests don't count as being Jewish. And when they say these kind of phrases, it doesn't diminish these accusations that it's being it's genocidal or anti-Semitic. All these contradictions are so obvious and heightened to everybody, I think. I actually think I had Avi Lewis in my mentions pointing this out. Below are the first words of Likud's founding platform, 1977. So Palestinians want to be free from the river to the sea. Zionists wanted exclusive sovereignty from the river to the sea. This is from Likud's platform. The right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. The right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is eternal and indisputable, and is linked with the right to security and peace. Therefore, Judea and Samaria will not be handed to any foreign administration. Between the sea and the Jordan, there will only be Israeli sovereignty. Absolute, it's crazy. Like, and I think we're only scratching the surface here. I think we're only scratching the surface because, like, I feel like this is just going to continue. I do think that like we can't be intimidated, you know? They're trying, who knows if these charges will even stick, you know? Who knows if these charges will even stick? The point is, though, that they're trying to intimidate people out of going to these protests, using specific words and phrases, having specific flags, and we can't allow ourselves to be intimidated by that. You know? Like we're seeing in France, where they're trying to pass laws against these protests. And like if one or two people get punished and everyone is scared into being silent after, that's how that kind of campaign works and is successful. But like we're seeing in France, in places where they're trying to curb these protests, they're just going out even more and more. Like they can't arrest 100,000 people. And I don't know, I've been to a couple of these Palestine protests, and yeah, at every one of these protests, this chant is common, and that is not going to stop. That is going to continue. Yeah, like blackballing commies in Hollywood. It's all the exact same playbook. Like it's the exact same. I mean, given the Georgia RICO case against Cop City protesters handing out flyers, odds point to it sticking. I mean, that's a good point too. No one should we shouldn't have faith in any of these institutions to like dilute this in any way. We really shouldn't. We're seeing some like interesting pushback from journalists in these press conferences. It's interesting to see journalists like actually doing their jobs on this. This is journalist Sam Husseini talking to this Pentagon spokesman. Even, I don't know how Max Blumenthal gets into these press conferences as well, but, and you know, I have problems with Max Blumenthal, and I think he's a dipshit. There's an interesting clip from him asking questions at one of these conferences as well that we got to take a look at. News from France, if anyone's interested. After illegally banning protests in support of Palestine, the government is organizing a march against anti-Semitism, inviting all parties, including the far-right party founded by French collaborators of Nazis and actual former Waffen-SS members. The strongest left party refuses to participate because of this and is vilified as anti-Semitic, and supporters of Palestine only because they'd want the vote of Muslims, not because they have a spine. Yeah, I mean, it's really, this is something that I've been thinking about for a while now. This whole weaponization of anti-Semitism. We're really, like, I've been talking about a lot lately. We're really seeing like the culmination of a lot of this, the efforts, especially over the last 10 years, to link this completely in people's minds, the idea of anti-Semitism and criticizing Israel. I've been interested in this in a while. You know, we saw the whole Corbyn movement. That's exactly the issue. That's exactly how they were able to destroy that movement. And now we're seeing like it getting like its logical extension now. And using the idea of like inclusion and diversity and hate speech in order to promote genocide, violent ethno-states, ethnic cleansing, mass bombing campaigns, and using this kind of liberalized language about safe spaces and anti-Semitism and hate speech in order to shut down a protest which are trying to say that bombing little kids is bad.
Risk facing criminal and civil liabilities for aiding and abetting genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity under international law, and may face investigation and prosecution. Do members of the State Department face similar possibilities?
Again,
Greg Mokhiber, who just resigned as director of the New York office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, noted that intent, usually the hardest part of genocide to prove, isn't in this case. He wrote in his resignation letter, quote, "Explicit statements of intent by leaders in the Israeli government and military leave no room for doubt or
and the United States government.
debate." You claim that you want Israel to make the distinction, but you don't seem to be making the distinction. If I might, I didn't interrupt you. I didn't interrupt you. The Center for Constitutional Rights just put out a statement. Legal organizations put members of Congress on notice for complicity on genocide. Quote, please take note, this is a letter that they sent to members of Congress, Center for Constitutional Rights. Please take notice that should you vote in favor of that package, the Biden package for Israel, you risk facing criminal and civil liabilities for aiding and abetting genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity under international law, and may face investigation and prosecution. Do members of the State Department face similar possibilities?
Again, Sam, as I said, we have the U.S. government has a rigorous process in place for evaluating whether something constitutes genocide, and we have not made that assessment in this case.
But you continue to pretend that the bombing of hospital after hospital, bakery after bakery, university after university, and somehow you keep pretending
4,000 dead kids.
They're just after military people.
I would actually like to see this whole exchange. John Kirby's comments yesterday about no red lines would be grounds to charge with complicity to genocide. You've got like that Brian Mass dipshit who wore the IDF uniform to Congress, basically downplaying the idea that there is such a thing as a Palestinian civilian. You've got congressmen saying like just turn the whole thing into a parking lot. Lindsey Graham, there's nonstop calls for like wiping people out. And the only one that gets censored is the only Palestinian Palestinian American,
some leftist based in Canada.
Congressperson.
I was turned on to this.
The only person that gets censored.
I found this.
Absolutely absurd. Larry, hello. Thank you for the raid. What is up, Larry? Is this your homework, Larry? Dude, please. It's just ludicrous though, the way that like Rashida Tlaib gets censored or censured. This is what happens, Larry. Gets censored for saying from the river to the sea, and for
you can count on me
framing all this violence as being a result of the occupation and standing up for Palestinian
Rob
people.
is posted up in a Liberal Party-run broadcast building.
That is correct. That's correct, Frank. It's just amazing who gets censored and who doesn't. It's grotesque, honestly. It is a badge of honor being censored by these absolute fucking freaks and sociopaths and ghouls. Thank you, Gwynny, for the gifted sub. I appreciate it. It's ridiculous that just saying that is the most solidarity anyone in the entire U.S. government has said publicly. And people in her own party voting to censor her. Absolutely fucking absurd. Yeah, we actually just watched that one. We actually just watched this clip. Gilf of Tonkin. We would just watch that one. It's illegal to say that genocide is good. Or it's illegal to not say that genocide is good. That's right, yeah. It's anti-Semitic when you say that. When you say that Israel should stop mass murdering children. It is a badge of honor, but it's still just absolutely shameful. And here's Max Blumenthal.
Accused China. 21 Secretary Blinken accused China of the crime of genocide for its alleged.
They're closing up shop on the whole China genocide thing. But he didn't accuse them of killing on any mass scale or forcible transfer. Now we see with Israel's military assault on Gaza, something like every 200 people in the Gaza Strip has been eliminated. Over 4,000 children killed. The Ministry of Intelligence, as Sam pointed out, in Israel has published a blueprint for the forced transfer of the entire Palestinian population to Egypt. We have the intent to commit genocide expressed at the highest level of the Israeli government, including Netanyahu himself referring to the Palestinian population as Amalek, the biblical Amalek. So I wonder, when you're accusing one country of genocide without accusing them of mass killing, and then blocking ceasefires to enable another country's military assault, what metric are you using to determine Please make this
genocide,
make sense.
or is this just political rhetoric?
It's certainly not political rhetoric. The department, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, we have a rigorous process in place for evaluating whether something constitutes as genocide or not. And that is true in any country that that situation might be being looked at. That is not a term that we have assessed pertains
when
to
they're
this
when they're
current
official
conflict.
bad guys,
We
they
are,
do
of course,
genocide, and when they're our
monitoring
friends,
the
it's not
evolving
genocide.
situation
That's what we,
and
that's
are
our
examining facts as
how we
they
determine
develop.
this.
This continues to be an incredibly challenging and fraught situation, but it's also important to remember that Hamas bears responsibility for sparking this war. They have brought this Project War.
Fuck
to
you.
Gaza.
Okay, well, President Biden has accused the Russian government of genocide for its actions in Ukraine, where in 2 years it has killed as many civilians as Israel has killed in 1 month in the Gaza Strip. So how do you account for that disparity where you're assisting one country and accusing the other of genocide when the country you're assisting has systematically killed so many more people in 1 month?
Those circumstances are totally and completely not the same, and to make a comparison like that, candidly, is incredibly inappropriate. We have been please don't interrupt me. We have been have raised directly with the Israeli government about the need to distinguish between Hamas terrorists and Palestinian
They're not doing
civilians.
that, sir.
This is something that the secretary has raised directly on his travels.
They're not doing that, though.
We even
They keep
laid
saying
out
that.
we
We've
believe
been very clear
are,
about this, but they're not listening to you.
commitments that can be made additionally on dealing with protecting civilian life.
Is this guy an intern? I don't know. This is like a
and
C.
we're
This is like
watching
a
very closely
Defense Department
to
C team
make sure that happens.
guy.
You've referred to Palestinian civilians as human shields. Doesn't that blur the distinction between civilians and militants?
I am not. We have not referred to Palestinian civilians as human shields. We have
I
said.
sat here and heard Matthew Miller refer to them as human
We have
shields.
said that Hamas is using Palestinian civilians as human shields.
Wouldn't that be-
That is not hyperbole. That is something that we have seen Hamas do as they continue to integrate themselves into key civilian infrastructure across Gaza.
Wouldn't that be blurring the distinction between civilians and combatants? If you say Hamas is using civilians as human shields, wouldn't that be in some ways justifying the killing of civilians because they happen to be in the
we
way,
are not
in
justifying.
their homes?
There is no one in this administration that is justifying killing of civilians. Any civilian life
You're paying
loss,
for it.
Is incredibly troubling, heartbreaking to us.
It's
Any
so
number
troubling.
above
You're giving them the
zero
bombs
is
and the
deeply
bullets that they're
troubling
using
us.
to do it.
What
That's
we
how
are
troubling
doing
it
is.
is.
We are working with our Israeli partners to ensure that steps can be taken to minimize the impact.
They're not doing
on
that, though, sir.
civilian life. And we also have believe that there is a moral imperative. There is a strategic
How do these people sleep at
imperative
night?
to take steps to minimize loss of civilian life. I'm going to work through them. I've answered like 4 of your questions. You could.
Thank you, Tati Raclette. These people are just unbelievable. Steps can be taken. Like, you know, it's just, it's insane. It's insanity. You're sending them the weapons to do it. There's people in the U.S. government being like, turn it into a parking lot, just like kill them all. We're taking steps to ensure, but you're not, though. That is not happening. If you're telling them to make these distinctions between military combatants or targets and civilians, they're not listening to you. Like, no one believes this. Yeah, it's just so different. It's these two situations, you know, Ukraine and Israel. It's just so different. We are taking steps towards expressing more concern about the humanitarian situation. Fucking insane.
Good morning. I know that the...
This guy's funny.
Good morning. I know that the ongoing U.S.-funded genocide has been shocking to a lot of Americans. And frankly, our administration was a little shocked to learn that you all care so much. But I'm hoping that my presence here today can make you go, they're black? maybe it's not all bad. I really want to reiterate what we have already said and done, but in a concerned tone that is completely disconnected from the words that I'm saying, because from the bottom of my heart, I do not care. My role here today is to soothe any of the icky feelings that you might have about all those people dying over there. And I will say, I'm better at it than the white guys. I am. But I'm also here to reassure those of you who are under the impression that a black person in a high-profile
Thank you, Diego, for the gifted sub.
Job means progress for all black people. And for any black Americans who are connecting the dots between your experience and the people over there, cut it out. And perhaps we should consider that the people who want this genocide to stop are the real genociders. Have we thought about that? Sure, they say thousands of people have died.
You can count on me.
Our official stance is
to talk you through all this.
TRRS Sankara.
Thank you, JNKD, for 32 months.
Or math, am I right?
On me. You're gonna have good old Rob to
absolutely,
talk you through
absolutely.
all this.
One
And thank you, Diego, as well, for another gifted sub. Very kind of you, Diego. Thank you.
of our top priorities remains retrieving the hostages. That's why we fully endorse the indiscriminate bombing of all the places that they might be. We are definitely going to win re-election. Yes, absolutely. I don't think the slaughtering of scores of non-white people is going to do anything to tamper the enthusiasm of the diverse coalition of our base. I mean, they hired me.
That's good.
And in March 20.
There's this. This as well. I meant to look at this yesterday and we didn't get to it. This is supposed to be great. This clip that somehow made it onto CNN. Still not totally sure how that happened. There must have been a really interesting pre-interview to get her on TV to be able to express some of these viewpoints.
Would you go back to Gaza?
In a heartbeat. In an absolute heartbeat. My heart is in Gaza. It will stay in Gaza. The Palestinian people that I worked with, both our national staff in the office as well as my staff at Indonesia Hospital, were some of the most incredible people I've ever met in my life. When everything went off and we got the notice to move south of Wadi Gaza, I was texting my nurses at Indonesia Hospital and I said, we lost a nurse weekend one. He was killed when the ambulance outside the hospital was blown up. And I was texting them when we got the evacuation orders and I said, did any of you move south? Did any of you get out? Like, are any of you coming down this way? And the only answer I got was, this is our community. This is our family. These are our friends. If they're going to kill us, we're going to die saving as many people as we can.
Smart.
And I said, if I can
Smart
ever
media
have
training.
an ounce of the heart that you have, I will die a happy person. They were incredible. That my doctors and nurses didn't leave out of loyalty to their community. And I know that there is an idea being pushed right now that anyone that stayed behind is going to be considered some kind of a threat. And I want to remind people that the people that stayed behind are heroes. The people that stayed behind are they know they're going to die and they're choosing to stay behind anyway.
You're talking about doctors, nurses in the hospital.
I wake up every morning and I send out a text message and I ask, are you alive? And every night before I go to sleep, I send another message and says, are you alive?
Well, Kelly, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, pretty amazing that she actually made it on there. I'll link the.
You've just become an
TikTok we
elite
looked at
member
earlier as
of the
well.
Friendship Triangle.
Oh, goodness. Regime Pilled, thanks so much for 5 gifted subs. Thank you, Regime Pilled. That's very, very kind of you. Here's the TikTok. This guy's been really good, actually. My union-funded gift subs I've been waiting to give your community. Regime Peld, I really appreciate it.
Children who are, we are talking about 4,000 children who are dead. And if I may be very clear, those are the most unpleasant deaths that these children could have died. They're being crushed in their homes.
This is horrific.
They're losing their limbs. They're undergoing surgery without anesthetics. What we are witnessing is horrifying, no matter the definition, and it should shock the conscience of all of us. You know, we are doctors in our
like,
nature,
excuse me for not caring about this like
asking us to
Hamas
do with a
propaganda
humanitarian
video as
pause
much.
is
Like,
to bring in the equipment.
you know, I don't know if people want to criticize me, if they want to say that I'm insensitive for not caring about that. I have tweets that I sent out on October 7th that I'm sure are going to get screenshotted and sent back to me for probably as long as I'm on social media and talking about this kind of stuff. But yeah, you'll excuse me if I just don't get too moved by this kind of like effort to show this kind of like Hamas atrocity porn. You know? Nothing. They'll be the first to tell you that nothing justifies Hamas's violence and Hamas's attacks on people. Well, nothing justifies this. There's no justification. You can put together whatever propaganda video you want. You can get Gal Gadot or fucking Amy Schumer or whatever other dumbass actress or whoever wants to go and like stamp their name and their image on this to promote this idea. Show all the Hamas atrocity porn you want. Nothing justifies this. Absolutely nothing. And every single person that is living through this situation and is going to grow up to be an adult is going to like devote their lives to inflicting violence on people. That's a totally normal reaction to living through this kind of thing. You know, and if 20 years from now, kids that grow up in this environment, or if God forbid this still horrific situation is still ongoing, 20 years from now, the kids that are growing up through this situation are going to commit their own acts of violence. And you know what? I'm not going to condemn them either. I'm going to condemn, just like I am right now, condemn the people that are involved in this colonialist occupation and perpetuating this apartheid system to begin with.
Necessary to stitch people up and repair them, and then to start the bombing again, and for us to then fix them. That is not enough. We need a ceasefire. I mean, what we are seeing right now is dozens and dozens of medical facilities in Gaza, which are absolutely...
There's no justification for this.
There is no capacity in Gaza at this point to care for the wounded who are there already. There are 3,500 beds in Gaza. Most of them are not available to patients at this point, and there are 10,000 plus wounded. Our surgeons are literally doing surgery on people on the ground, outside, in tents, in open air. There is no capacity at this point for a pause. We have to stop and allow the system to be able to rebuild, to be able to provide care.
It is absolutely horrendous. No justification for that. I don't care about this, like whatever Hamas atrocity porn that they're going to put together. No justification for it. Like, are these kids Hamas human shields too? Is this enough for people to maybe realize what it is that they're supporting here?
Since the 7th of October, we face extermination, killing,
little kids doing a press conference? Is that enough to convince people?
All of this of front of the world. They lie to the world that they kill the parties, but they kill the people of Gaza, their dreams and their future. Kids of Gaza run out of death once and once. We come to Al-Shifa hospital to keep us from bombing. We suddenly run out of death more after bombing the hospital. The occupation is starving us. We don't find water, food, and we drink from the unusable water. We come now to shout and invite you to protect us. We want to live, we want peace, we want to judge the killers of children. We want medicine, food and education. And we want to live as the other children live.
Again, and there's U.S. congressmen casting doubt on the idea that there is such a thing as like innocent civilians or innocent children. Like this was on Fox News. There's total like ideological conformity on this. But like
understand what the administration I understand what the administration is trying to do. They have a lot of pressure within their party that says, hey, you know, put the handcuffs on Israel. Don't let them bomb people. Well, this is a part of war. This is a part of, you know how many children died in Iraq and Afghanistan as casualties? But you know what? There were also children that didn't have a problem putting on a suicide vest out there and murdering our guys as well. We need to be serious about the ideology that we're facing. If we're not, more Jews
this is what's
will
going
die
on
here in
on
America.
American media.
More Americans will die as a result, and we can have the next 9/11. This is not an ideology that you can negotiate with. This is not an ideology that you can pray with and think that they're going to change their mind. It is deeply rooted in who they are, and we should confront them the same way.
Like absolute psycho shit. It's unbelievable the kind of stuff that gets aired on American media. It is absolutely unbelievable what passes for like this kind of analysis. They are sickos. Holy fuck, I avoided US media for a month and forgot how they managed to be more insane than anywhere else every single time. Like it's absolutely ludicrous. Just going out there and making the case that like it's not only is killing kids just part of something that happens in a war, but also sometimes they deserve it. Sometimes they kind of have it coming. Some people act like there's nothing before October 7th. I mean, we talk about this often. Rameek. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the username. But this like selective memory that we have. We saw with both Ukraine and Russia and with Palestine. You know, when did this conflict start? October 7th. What happened before then? Doesn't matter. We don't remember. It's been collectively purged. We've decided that it just doesn't matter and we don't need to pay attention to it. We don't need to remember. You know, not only the decades of what Israel's been doing.
Rob to talk you through all this.
Doing in Gaza and in the West Bank and elsewhere, but all the peaceful protests we've seen, the aid flotilla, the Great March of Return, BDS, all of these peaceful, non-violent movements, all the speeches, all the art and poetry, working within the system, you know, none of it has worked. We don't remember it, and all of that is gone, and just all that remains is October 7th. Very similar to Russia and Ukraine. When did the Russian-Ukraine war start? Well, it started February 22nd, or what was it? It started February 2022. And everything that happened prior to that is irrelevant. Everything prior to that is completely erased from our public memory. We're basically at the actually Hamas has a child military moment. Like it's so incredibly disturbing. Yes, Shireen Abu Akleh's murder and her funeral being attacked as well. As usual, here's Evo Morales, totally on point as well.
¿Cómo es posible organismos internacionales de acción urgente semejante masacren al pueblo palestino?
Yeah, coherent screams. I mean, it's something we talk about often. The whole like double think, 1984 Orwellian stuff, like Orwell himself. Like that whole book is like it's like anti-communist propaganda. It's supposed to be about Stalinism, and it perfectly describes this exact phenomenon. The doublethink, the complete erasure of history, the revision, the real-time history being revised in real time, you know? All of these concepts has never been more apparent than right now.
Es genocidio. Hospitales, en días miles, ¿no? Muertos con bombardeos.
Great sweatshirt on
Atentar
Devo
a
as
la
well.
vida inocente es genocidio. Que declare a Israel como un país terrorista, demande ante la Corte Penal Internacional por genocidio. Es genocidio. Todo mi respeto, mi admiración a esos pueblos que se suman para defender. Y yo pido a mi gobierno expresar solidaridad, compartir lo poco que tenemos con gente afectada, destrozada. Duele mucho ver lo que está pasando.
And remember, when the coup in Bolivia was going on, all the same people that are today supporting Israel, all the same people that all supported Ukraine, all the exact same people. Oh, it's not a coup. It's not a coup. No. The term limits. The OSINT guys, the cool, edgy anarchists. He is swagged out. That is an insanely good sweatshirt with the llamas on it. That is so sick. And meanwhile, look at this. I mean, it's amazing how all the Israeli propaganda is all like fucking cartoons. Like you see the Palestinian propaganda, if you could describe it, it's like this constant stream of suffering and dead civilians and dead kids. And the Israeli propaganda is like, here's an actual cartoon. Here's a cartoon of like a G.I. Joe base under a hospital complex, or this. Or even they're even doing cartoons of non-existent pro-Israel protests. Watch this. This is absolute insanity. And think about as well, all we talk about the colonialist tropes. People try to downplay Israel's role as like a settler colony, or to downplay the role of white supremacy and Zionism and how these things are totally linked, and say, what, the Jews, like the people in Israel, they're like brown people. But it's like using these classic white supremacist tropes about this bastion of Western civilization defending the world from invading Asiatic hordes, right? That's exactly why Israel and Ukraine are linked. That's why there's the effort that people made to link Ukraine and Palestine was always nonsensical, because both Ukrainian nationalists and Israeli nationalists view their societies in the exact same way. It's this Western outpost of civilization defending the rest of the world from the invading hordes. It's pure Orientalism. Look at this shit. Insane. Insane. Like, they really just spell it out for us, right? They really just totally spell it out. Like, we've all been there. This is relatable, at least this face. This is me when I haven't had my coffee in the morning. But really just spelling it out, right? Like, this is a war to protect Western civilization from these invading hordes of, like, Muslims and brown people, right? That's what it is. That's exactly what, it's the age-old copy-paste, word-for-word justification for every single, like, colonialist project ever. Yeah, he decides to just kill Europe anyway. Like, that's kind of interesting. And this fucking guy says, if you haven't seen this yet, you must. This is 100% spot on and so important. Again, that's all their propaganda, right? Just like AI shit and actual and cartoons. His name's not Hitler Fluid, it's Hillel. But that's it. We have to do this genocide because when we do genocide and mass murder Palestinian children, it's protecting Europe. It's protecting Western civilization. Insanity. That's what passes for their propaganda there. Yeah, it's the most old-timey colonial racist shit ever. I mean, just like the old cartoon. Where's the one? I'm trying to find it. I'm trying to look at all old colonialist cartoons now, and there's a lot of extremely racist shit in there. Do you know what I'm referring to, folks? The image that I'm referring to? It's a cartoon from the colonialist period that's like an exact description of the exact sort of asymmetry of violence and what counts as barbarism and what counts as civilization. RFK Jr. comparing Israel to the U.S. aircraft carrier in the Middle East was accurate, unfortunately. It is so funny that people tried to pretend that he was some anti-imperialist. He's gonna, RFK is really gonna rein in the deep state and the intelligence community and the military-industrial complex. And now he's just like throwing his fucking body on the tracks to protect Israel from being accurately accused of genocide. Yeah, thank you, Diego. It's the exact same thing. This has been going on for so long. Like, it's honestly incredible. Honestly, like that we're still having the exact same argument. What counts as barbarism and what counts as civilization? Who's allowed to wield violence and who's not? And like I say too, it's like we see it internationally, we see it in Israel, we see it with the US military, and you see it domestically when it comes to the state and the right of the police to use violence, and when the police use violence versus when people commit violent acts against the police, and the asymmetry and who's allowed to do that. Yeah, it's so funny pretending RFK Jr. some principled voice. Absolute, what a farce that is. if anyone got conned by that, then like, you know, they should really reevaluate some things about their views and their analyses. If you got conned by RFK, please just start reading more. Yeah, you're anti-CIA, but you're pro-DOD. Very coherent.
Since last October 7, the world has watched with horror the images of a new escalation of violence in the conflict between Palestine and Israel. At the time of recording this interview, more than 8,000 Palestinians had died, of them more than 3,000 children, under the bombs dropped by the Israeli army against the Gaza Strip. While Western countries
I don't know. I've talked to Aaron. I think Aaron has done a lot of writing and interesting analysis that I think is good, but like, after a certain point, you're just being a stand for the Kennedy family, which is like, that's not, if you're into the whole JFK assassination thing, or you want to talk about the Alan Dulles or the different viewpoint of JFK when it came to foreign policy or imperialism or whatever, okay, we can have that conversation. But at that point, then you're just being like a stand for the fucking Kennedy family. Which is that's not like an actual analysis. There's no theory behind that. It's purely just getting caught up in like, it's like a celebrity thing at that point. Like, come on.
Insist on their support of Israel's offensive, the people of the world wonder when the tragedy of the Palestinian people will end. From Havana, the Palestinian ambassador to Cuba, Amram Samhan, has agreed to speak with BT News about the current situation of the Palestinian people.
Thank you.
Bueno, primero que todo, embajador,
we got political dynasties here as well, actually. It's quite common.
Embajada de Palestina para hablar de los últimos acontecimientos. Es un placer estar aquí con usted.
Mucho gusto.
Embajador, del 7 de octubre para acá hemos visto una intensidad de violencia, si se quiere, por parte del gobierno israelí, del ejército israelí, hacia el pueblo palestino, específicamente en la Franja de Gaza. Esto no es algo que no hayamos visto en el pasado. Ya estamos acostumbrados al nivel de violencia de Israel contra la Franja de Gaza. ¿Cómo evalúa usted en este caso la actual situación del pueblo palestino?
En primer lugar, la causa de todo lo que está pasando es la ocupación militar israelí a las tierras palestinas, especialmente hablando de las tierras palestinas del Estado de Palestina, como es reconocido internacionalmente. Eso en primer lugar. En segundo lugar, la mayor parte de los acontecimientos que están pasando ahora es por causa de que no hay una solución justa, pacífica para la causa del Estado, del pueblo palestino, que es solamente poner en práctica todas las resoluciones internacionales, especialmente el 242 del Consejo de Seguridad y la solución de las Naciones Unidas, que es la solución de la vuelta de todos los refugiados palestinos a sus hogares. Es decir, el asunto está en que las negociaciones se quedaron bloqueadas por el Estado de Israel, porque no está poniendo su voluntad para poder ir hacia una solución justa en la zona, practicando las resoluciones internacionales, sin ir más para allá. Y al mismo tiempo una ocupación militar que ya lleva desde el año 67, es decir, ya lleva más de 46 años, y que en esta ocupación militar están ocupando las tierras palestinas que según las resoluciones internacionales están ocupadas por la fuerza. Entonces hay que salir de ahí. Si había una resolución justa y duradera y que los israelíes lo han puesto en práctica, entonces no pudo haber estas guerras. Ahora, nuestro pueblo en general es un pueblo pacífico. Nuestro pueblo lo que quería es que esta solución que fuimos negociando después de Oslo, hacía crear un Estado palestino independiente, soberano, con Jerusalén Oriental su capital, y una solución pacífica, justa al asunto de los refugiados. Esto iba ya funcionando al principio cuando estaba Rabin en el poder, cuando lo estaban los laboristas, vamos a decir, la izquierda de Israel, estaba en el poder y vamos avanzando hacia una solución en la región. Pero ¿quién mató Oslo? Por supuesto, la derecha israelí, Netanyahu. Y antes de Netanyahu, los otros dirigentes israelitas, Begin y luego Sharon. Ahora, si nosotros condenamos una acción, y estoy hablando del mundo occidental, si ustedes están en contra de una acción determinada, tienen que estar en contra de todas las acciones desde el año 48 en contra de nuestro pueblo, porque eran acciones similares y parecidos y más fuertes. Cisjordania por un lado y Gaza por otro lado. Cisjordania está atacada todos los días por los colonos israelíes. Todos los días se muere gente. Todos los días hay invasiones. Todos los días atacan a los campamentos refugiados. Todos los días atacan los colonos a los campesinos palestinos y no les permiten hacer su trabajo diario, etcétera, etcétera, etcétera. Entonces, los palestinos de Gaza, pues a veces reaccionan, y la mayor parte de sus reacciones han sido manifestaciones populares al lado de la frontera, no ha sido acciones militares, porque llevamos tiempos sin acciones militares en la región de Gaza. Y cuando ya se cerró todos los caminos, entonces ha habido esta acción. Y la reacción ha sido de una forma, es decir, no está relacionada con la misma acción. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que quiere el gobierno de Netanyahu? Ellos dicen, a la opinión pública, quieren acabar con Hamas.
I'm just going to watch this for a few more minutes because I know we do have audio-only gang, many of whom, I don't want to make too many presumptions here, many of whom are maybe are not fluent in Spanish, so I'll leave this for a couple minutes because this is really interesting stuff, but I think probably the entire interview is probably best left for offline, off-stream viewing.
Y sacar los rehenes. No dicen más. No dicen que quieren con esto acabar con Hamas, sacar los rehenes y resolver el problema palestino. No, eso no lo dicen. Lo que ellos no dicen, pero lo piensan, es que Gaza tiene que salir, todo el pueblo palestino de Gaza, hacia el Sinaí. Eso es lo que quieren. Lo que quieren es acabar con la causa del pueblo palestino. El pueblo hebreo, yo no hablo del pueblo judío, el pueblo hebreo es un pueblo con una etnia clara que tiene sus derechos y tiene su identidad.
Israel just released another Hamas conversation where they said they're using ambulances to transport weapons. It's incredible that there's no low these shit stands won't stoop to. And honestly, this is like, it's hard to talk about this, but it's one of the main reasons that like whatever this like Hamas atrocity porn propaganda that they're putting together, I think it's automatically just their insistence of constantly lying about these things makes me just not trust it entirely, you know? And again, I don't want to sound insensitive. I don't want to deny that any violence has happened or that innocent people haven't been caught up in that. But when they repeatedly lie in the most absurd, almost comical ways, I think it's like should be like a normal reaction to start saying like, well, what else are they lying about? Like, why can we trust this? Certainly in this atrocity porn video, they're not going to be showing the IDF like shelling any of these homes or like engaging in these crossfires at these kibbutzes or at this festival, like what some of these survivors have testified to or talked about. I'm going to need to see a source that is not the IDF known and proven liars. So yeah, like it's just it's a normal reaction when someone, like if you knew someone in your personal life that just repeatedly lies to you over and over and over again, eventually you start just assuming what they're saying are lies. You know, I don't think that's like insensitive. I think that's like a normal reaction to have. So now they're doing this. Oh, by the way, hello, fellow terrorists. Did you know that we are transporting weapons in ambulances? Yes, brother. God is good.
ولا شيء. طب ابعت لك اسعاف. لا يا اخوان عندي اسعافات قاعد اطلع معي اسعاف. يا عم في اسعاف خليه يجيك ياخذك ينزلك على باب الدار. يا عمي ما انا في اسعافات بتطلع وبتنزل قادر اطلع مع اي اسعاف بس مش فاهم الفكره. واذا مش قادر تحرك السياره وفيش عندك اسعافات كلمني على البدر عشان ابعت لك اسعاف. يا راجل بطلع معي اسعاف.
But send one of the terrorist ambulances that we like to drive around.
يا اخوي ايش
Like, it's just absurd. They expect, like, they really think you're stupid. So yeah, the nation that isn't putting out this like low level, low effort, embarrassing propaganda. Excuse me if I might cast a little doubt on their other recent efforts at creating these kinds of narratives or showing this kind of propaganda. They have access to this, but they didn't know about the October 7th attack before the time. Exactly. Before October 7th, they were completely just totally unawares, not monitoring anybody, not paying attention. Since that time, though, since that day, they're able to tell with mathematical, scientific precision where all these Hamas commanders are all hanging out, in the tunnels under these hospitals and schools and children's radiology departments and this kind of stuff. Watch this for a couple more minutes.
Como pueblo hebreo, ¿no? Sí, nosotros hemos sido primos de este pueblo y han vivido con nosotros años y años de historia. Pero lo que no se puede aceptar es que cancelan en nuestra identidad, en nuestros derechos nacionales, en nuestros derechos de autodeterminación como un pueblo, porque somos un pueblo que está ahí, que tiene 14 millones de habitantes.
Déjame hacer una acotación aquí. Usted hablaba ahorita de las intenciones que realmente tiene Israel detrás de esta nueva ofensiva. Desde el 7 de octubre para acá, las cifras más o menos actualizadas hablaban de más de 8.000 palestinos muertos, cerca de más de 3.000 de ellos son menores de edad, más de 2.000 de ellos son mujeres. ¿Es creíble entonces la matriz de opinión que quiere imponer Israel de que lo que busca es realmente liberar al pueblo de la Franja de Gaza de Hamas?
No, por supuesto que no. Es decir, lo que dicen ellos no es que liberar al pueblo, sino es expulsar. Es decir, a través de esta excusa de que Hamas está ahí, expulsar a este pueblo hacia las fronteras. Hamas, ¿cuándo nació? ¿Cuándo ha sido Hamas? Hamas ha sido en el año 87,
This is the important
88.
point.
En primera intifada palestina.
Hamas came out of
Entonces,
1987,
los 40 años
after the first
anteriores,
intifada.
que es del año
The previous 40 years, since 48, there was no
había
Hamas.
¿Y por qué había tantas luchas y
Why were there
tantas
so many
masacres al
fights and
pueblo palestino en
massacres
aquellos años?
in those
¿Por
years?
qué? El asunto es el pueblo palestino, la identidad palestina, la causa del pueblo palestino, los derechos nacionales y de autodeterminación del pueblo palestino. Eso es el problema. Porque ellos creen que en este 28.000 kilómetros de tierra, que es la Palestina histórica, solo puede ver un pueblo, un país, un Estado, que es el Estado judío, el pueblo judío. Eso es lo que quieren. Verdaderamente, ustedes han visto en la media internacional cuando Netanyahu puso en las Naciones Unidas el mapa de Israel, lo puso con Palestina completa. Entonces, ¿dónde está Cisjordania y Gaza? No está ahí.
Hablando de la aparición
From the
de
river to the
Netanyahu
sea, that's
en
what
la
they want.
Organización de Naciones
Israel.
Unidas, usted hablaba hace unos minutos de las resoluciones que se han aprobado en todos estos años. Ya hemos perdido la cuenta de las resoluciones y los mandatos que se han aprobado para que, entre otras cosas, Israel permita el retorno de refugiados, de lo que usted hablaba hace poco, y se llega a una solución clara en cuanto a la frontera o el establecimiento de dos estados. ¿Por qué Israel se toma la prerrogativa de no respetar todas estas resoluciones y estos mandatos?
Porque creen que es un Estado por encima de la legalidad internacional. ¿Por qué? Porque están apoyados por el emperador del mundo, que es Estados Unidos. El mismo Estados Unidos reconoció que Jerusalén Este, con el este, por supuesto, es la capital del Estado de Israel, con el tiempo de Trump, y que Biden no lo negó. verdaderamente Estados Unidos, aunque
Biden
votó
just as much
a
of a
veces
hardcore,
a favor
unrepentant
de
Zionist as
algunas
anybody else.
resoluciones a favor del pueblo palestino, como lo último en el tiempo de Obama, cuando votaron a favor de la solución de los dos estados. Entonces, Israel está apoyada primero por Occidente, en los años 40 y 50 por Occidente, con Britania
They stopped
su
a
dirigente en
Hezbollah
aquellos
attack,
tiempos, y
Mossad
ahora
and Brazilian intelligence.
con el
That's
Occidente,
interesting.
además de el Occidente europeo, además de Estados Unidos.
That's really the thing. If there is some kind of a attack anywhere in the West, that's the thing that's going to escalate this to just a full-on insane frenzy, the likes of which we've probably never seen. And Malcolm Nance, like former intelligence asset, has already indicated that that's like a possibility, either directly or indirectly.
Hasta ahora, más de 1,000 soluciones internacionales a favor de Palestina.
Malcolm
no
Nance.
se puso en práctica ninguno, absolutamente ninguno.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really great interview, but I think for audio only, gang, we're gonna move on from that. But I'll link it here just in case when people want to finish the interview. That's another one from Breakthrough News. I'll link that in the chat right now. And we got more Norman. New Norman Finkelstein video just dropped. It's with Aaron Mate.
1 month into this latest Israeli assault on Gaza, we're now talking about the most murderous Israeli assault to date. As we're recording this, the official toll is more than 10,000 Palestinians have been killed, including more than 4,200 children. And that
He is really in his element right now.
More than double the amount of children that have been killed by Israel since 1967. So in just 1 month, Israel has already killed double the number of Palestinian children that it killed since 1967. So, Norman, and the hard part about saying these figures is by the time you say them, they're already outdated because this massacre is unfolding in real time.
No, I never listened to the one on True.
I'm asking you your assessment of Israel's assault 1 month in, what you think their goals are, if they really have any, beyond...
Wasn't there multiple N-word usages? I heard that's the main takeaway that I think a lot of people had.
Is appropriate?
Well, thank you for having me. I was surprised when I realized today it was 1 month since the Israeli assault began. It feels like it's just been one long, continuous day with occasional breaks. And I have to say, on a totally self-indulgent note, I feel completely depleted at this point. And I just try to keep two things in mind. Number one, my depletion pales in a ridiculous comparison to the people of Gaza, who for 1 month have had to endure uninterrupted terror bombing on a scale probably not ever experienced anywhere on this planet, ever. And the second thing which gives me a certain amount of, let's just say, inspiration is I, every once in a while, pick up the letters of Rosa Luxemburg, and some of you might know that she spent most of World War I in jail. And even though she tried to lift her own spirits, it must have been a very difficult ordeal because by nature she was a gregarious personality. And just as she was released 3 years after her imprisonment, she came out and her friends observed later that she came out and her hair in jail had turned completely white. And people were quite shocked at how seriously she had physically deteriorated in jail. And yet, she literally did not miss a beat. She went right from the jail into, and this sounds like a movie script, but it really is not. She went right from the jail into the street and thus began for
It's
her,
kind of hypnotic, isn't it, Sean?
wing of the German Social Democratic Party, thus began the German Revolution. And it ended for her with her being beaten so badly that one woman who observed it said, "I have never in my life seen a person brutalized the way she was." And it reminded me that, well, those were great people in great times, but it also humbled me. Norm, you've got it good. Find the energy, we move on. So, where do we stand now?
The feedback is quite
I
annoying.
think pretty clear. One is that Israel is now using or exploiting the opportunity of October 7th to do things which it has not done before. The tactics Israel is the tactics.
It's funny you say Sean, he's haughty, but it gives him good heel energy. It's funny because in that classic Finkelstein promo, the crocodile tears promo, he pulls a full-on heel move in that when he says, "Please shut up." When everyone starts clamoring and booing, that's the ultimate heel move. When you're starting to get heat, you give the crowd a big "shut up" when you're talking to really like drive them into even more of a frenzy. That's the ultimate heel move. Great promo, that Norman Finkelstein.
Using are obviously not new. Terror bombing.
He works the crowd, that's right.
Hospitals.
My hand goes up, your mouth goes shut.
Civilians, targeting civilian infrastructure, pulverizing homes. Anybody who has even just scratched the surface of Israel.
He would be really good, not really like a good wrestler promo, but if he was like a manager or something. That kind of very like slow, intense, kind of a Jake the Snake delivery. Not the big screamy, shouty promo.
Periodic
ECW era Steve Austin.
of the lawns in Gaza will know that these tactics are the stock in trade.
I didn't know you had a music degree, Dr. Maggot. That's cool.
However, it's
Yeah, or
clearly
2008 Jericho, yeah.
occurring on a not just quantitatively, but a qualitatively different scale. And then one has to assess what are its goals. The first
We did talk
goal,
about the
it
gooning,
seems
John.
to
It was
me,
the
is
first thing that we talked about.
pretty transparent.
The very first thing we talked about,
It's
of
a
course.
kind of morbid bloodlust. The need to revenge the fact that the Untermenschen have risen up.
Absolutely, Demi Darko.
And it's
Trump, one of the best heels ever.
the case of these Übermenschen, the supermen, with all their arrogance, they now have to put the subhumans, the Untermenschen, in their place. Not least because they displayed a degree
That's a good one as
of
well, James.
cleverness and ingenuity which doesn't befit an Arab. So I think one shouldn't underestimate the extent to which there is that component of sheer bloodlust to teach them a lesson not to lift their head. The second component of the current assault has
I'm just going to go to the bathroom,
overlap
folks. I'll be right
with
back.
The first component, and that's what the Israelis call restoring the deterrence capacity. And deterrence capacity is just a fancy term, technical term, for restoring the Arab world's fear of Israel, which took a huge blow on October 7th. Because if there's any aspect of the Israeli military which is its trademark, it's been its intelligence capacity, its commando raids, the kind of high-tech ingenuity that one normally associates with this Übermenschen state. And yet, in a kind of cleverness that's kind of hard to conceive. Gaza, as everybody in this room knows, it's a tiny parcel of land. And it was the most heavily surveilled parcel of land on God's earth. And it was being surveilled by the most sophisticated surveillance technology known to humankind. And in Gaza, everybody is related to everybody else. So, what we do know, and a lot of what happened on October 7th remains quite murky, but what we do know is that, at least according to Hamas, and here I'm willing to give them, I'll grant some credibility to their statements. Usually their statements need to be corroborated. But I would say here it's probably true that they planned this operation for 2 years. Now, about 1,500 Hamas fighters burst through the gates of Gaza on October 7th. About 240 Israelis were taken hostage. So that would bring the number up, if you assume for each hostage there were roughly 2 fighters, that would bring up the number to about 2,000 Hamas militants burst through the gates. So that means that for about 2 years, this operation had been planned. Presumably, they tested it in advance in various forms, and yet if you know Arab society, and I suspect some people in this room are of Arab descent, when a relative comes visiting, you can't say, I'm busy. You have to open the door, then begins the protocol, the ritual with the coffee, the tea, and so forth. So there's a huge amount of interaction going on there in a very small space. And then there's the other element, which they call, the technical term is human intelligence. There are a huge number of collaborators in Gaza, the former employees of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. So that's another element in their in the intelligence available to Israel. And yet, they managed to
It does look
run
like
this
Aaron's asleep.
operation for 2 years with at
He's just
least
listening intently.
2,000 fighters involved. And it escaped the notice. It eluded the Israeli intelligence. And so for Israel, this was such a shattering blow. Even yesterday, I was talking to my closest and oldest friend in the West Bank, Musa Abu Heshesh, and he commented exactly what I deduced before talking to him. He said to me, everybody in the Arab world, suddenly it dawned on them, Israel is not that strong.
Paper
This
tigers.
is a rinky-dink army, Hamas. And this rinky-dink army in this totally impoverished, technically primitive corner of the world managed to pull this off. And that's what Israel fears most, namely its deterrence capacity. The Arab world's fear of it suffered a devastating blow on October 7th. And now one of their goals of the current round of the current massacre is to restore the deterrence capacity, to remind the Arab world that don't mess with us because we'll do to you what we're now doing to Gaza.
Norma, let me quote something for you. This is from your book, Gaza, an Inquest to Its Martyrdom. You point out that this goal of sowing fear in Israel's foes and its so-called deterrence capacity has been driving Israel for decades. So, for example, you quote Ariel Sharon in 1967. At the time, he's a divisional military commander. He goes on to become the prime minister. And he voiced concern in 67 that Israel was losing its, quote, deterrence capability, our main weapon, the fear of us.
Yes, and that concern on the part of Israel has been reiterated many times
a likely story
in the past month. And the third component is, in many ways, even though the first two are in and of themselves very destructive of the life of the people in Gaza, the third component is Israel is going to use this occasion where it seems to have the technical term they always use is a casus belli, namely a legitimate military grounds, namely what happened October 7th, and that is to use that sinister but wholly relevant language, in my opinion. They're going to use this occasion to finally solve the Gaza question. And the solution, if we can use the expression, the final solution they have in mind still remains somewhat murky because I don't think the Israelis themselves have decided or have figured out what is the maximum they can extract at this moment, or the maximum they can extract by exploiting what happened on October 7th. And there are various possibilities. It's quite clear now that their first hope was to force a significant portion, and maybe the whole of the Palestinian population, into the Egyptian Sinai. And they seemed to believe they had realistic prospects of that. Number one, the Egyptian economy is going through a very rough period now, and there were offers made to the head of state, Sisi, to give him a large amount of money if he would take the Gazans into the Sinai. A second aspect was that Prime Minister Netanyahu was actively lobbying in the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, to forgive the loans by Egypt. Right now, half of Egypt's revenue is servicing debt. So to forgive the loans if they would take the Arabs or Gazans into the Sinai. Unfortunately for Israel, that didn't work out. Sisi drew a red line on that and said, we're not taking over your Gaza problem. That's your problem, and you're going to have to figure out what to do. Now that's as of now. I can't predict whether there will be a change of heart on his part in another month or 2 months from now. So that was one of their goals. I think their hope was, by emptying out the northern sector of Gaza, Gaza is already among the most densely populated places on God's earth, and then you would double the density in the south, and then some gate has to open. It will become, in the most literal sense, unlivable. Short of that goal, it's quite clear, and the Israelis are not making any secret of it, is to simply totally demolish Gazan society, completely leveling it, turning it into effectively a cross between a garbage dump and a parking lot. It's already half of the civilian homes, dwellings, have been destroyed or severely damaged, and there have been entire neighborhoods which have disappeared. And the bottom line is there will be nothing to go back to. There will not even be any in the most literal sense, there will be nothing recognizable of where
this is not live loading.
Lived. It will simply have been pulverized. And I think that will then maybe convince
this was from yesterday, I believe, Soy Prem.
Palestinians not to go back, because there's nothing to go back to. So I think that's where things stand. I'm not a military expert, and I say that with a great deal of pride. I'm not a military expert. I would say at
He's
the
not an OSINT
military
guy.
level, it does look very grim. However well Hamas prepared for the Israeli ground invasion, it has taken such a pummeling is not the right word, such a devastation. It's hard to even guess how many fighters are still alive in the tunnels.
Even America is saying that have barely even touched the leadership.
It's simply unrealistic. Here, I think I can say without having military knowledge, it's unrealistic that they can militarily prevail over Israel. There has been some talk in Israel about simply dividing Gaza in two, then cutting off the tunnels at one end and just waiting it out until the fighters run out of food, run out of water, and then surface and get killed.
And the captives die because Netanyahu doesn't care about them. Let me ask you, Norman, about then the...
I just want to add one last thing. The one critical variable,
Aaron, please.
apart from international pressure, which doesn't seem like it's going to work. The only possibility I see in terms
Worth pointing out, though, from everything that we know, is that these hostages that are still there are being kept in these tunnels. This whole thing of like, why won't Hamas just give up the hostages? John Fetterman's postering his whole office with like images of these hostages. Meanwhile, Israel is just openly dropping bombs on their fucking heads, and is planning to like possibly just sealing off these tunnels until people just die of starvation or dehydration. That's how much they actually care about these hostages.
international pressure is Israel already, or I should say, the Biden administration already allowed one large-scale massacre, a single blow massacre, namely at the Arab National, what's called Baptist Hospital. Israel, the United States gave them a pass on that.
And Jabalia as well.
Well, I would say Jabalia didn't quite get the headlines that the hospital did. But if you go back, for example, to, and this is going to be way past most of you in the room, if you go back to the June 1982 invasion of Lebanon, what finally ended it was the Sabra and Shatila massacres in September 1980.
And then they name their flagship hummus brand after one of the massacres. This is a nation of sociopaths. And then it's anti-Semitic to boycott the hummus brand. It's hate speech to boycott the Israeli hummus brand that's named after a famous massacre that they perpetrated.
A fantastic massacre. It may come under the international pressure, forcing it to at least accept a ceasefire. Now, I did read as I was coming here today that Israel has declared that it's going after Al-Shifa Hospital. Al-Shifa is
The nation that would never ever dream of
Gaza.
bombing a hospital have certainly bombed a lot of hospitals since then.
If they do it by air, right now it seems like they won't be doing it by air, but if they do it by air and simply kill thousands of patients in the hospital, I think that will cause the Biden administration some political problems. But short of that, it doesn't look as if they can be stopped at the level of
They would never
international
dream of bombing a
pressure.
23rd
And then
hospital.
there's one other possibility.
What are we,
There's
monsters?
Hamas prevailing in a military contest. I don't believe that's possible. There's international pressure. I don't think that will kick in unless Israel commits a second huge massacre and the Biden administration decides we can't give a second pass. And the third possibility is, of course, the regional one.
And that's what I want to ask you about. Yeah. So, as we're speaking, the leader of Hezbollah, Nasrallah, gave a speech a few days ago. I'm curious your impressions from that speech. It was interpreted very differently by many people. The main takeaway I heard from him is he said, correct me if I'm wrong, he said that we will not let Hamas lose. So what does that mean? And what did you take away from his speech?
Well, I should note that he's giving another speech on Saturday, which merits attention. Sayed Nasrallah is very serious, very smart, and usually a person of his word. I, as many of my friends and comrades...
It's impossible to say, Dakadin, what the number of civilians that they're going to draw the line at is, because it's like, it's never gotten to this level before.
We were very disappointed. I was looking for a miracle, and the speech confirmed that miracles don't happen. He is plainly in an impossible situation, because if they do anything significant, Israel's Air Force will level Lebanon, and that will turn the whole Lebanese population against Hezbollah. And then there's the other question, whether Iran would support opening up a second front, because you will recall just before October 7th, there was that exchange of money for hostages, and Iran was hoping for some sort of rapprochement with the United States. So it's very unlikely that they want to risk a regional war. On the other hand, as Aaron correctly pointed out, most of Nasrallah's speech was given over to talking about everything Hezbollah had already done, namely it fired some rockets, he said about half the Israeli Navy, about a quarter of the Air Force were now on the northern front, so he's saying we're giving breathing room to Hamas. But he did say at the end, we will not let Hamas lose. And I would say, if he said it, he is a person of his word, and beyond being a person of his word, it's the credibility of his organization that's going to be at stake, because the whole reputation of Hezbollah is we don't just talk, we act. And if he said that,
he's talking to Aaron Mate at this clip.
As I've said in course of a lot of correspondence this past week, I don't know if I wish more that he does open a second front or that he doesn't open a second front. If he does open a second front, that will be
as he ages, he really does look like his father, doesn't he?
People of Gaza. But if he doesn't open the second front, it's a disaster for Gaza. If he does open the second front, all bets are off. It could so rapidly deteriorate into something which nobody wants to imagine. And we do have to bear in mind that Israel does have those nuclear weapons, and if a second front is open, and I don't know how much value to attach to it, but they say
they basically admitted that they have nuclear weapons.
Hamas's rocket and missile stockpile goes up to about 150,000 projectiles, and if they start heading towards Tel Aviv, then Hezbollah, what did I say?
Hamas, yeah.
Hezbollah, it's about 150,000. If they start targeting Tel Aviv, I don't know what's going to happen. It's a very tough moment now.
You mentioned
Israel
earlier
has
that
nuclear
the
weapons.
Biden administration has not acted.
Iran should have
imposed
one.
any constraints at all on Israel.
I support
even though-
Iran getting one.
even though it supplies the critical military support and diplomatic cover. The only pressure I've seen so far that's been reported is that the Biden administration has reportedly asked Israel to use smaller bombs on Gaza, pointing out that the bombs that they've given them are not meant to be used for these densely populated environments. So that's the one concrete step.
Can you use smaller bombs? Just shoot him in the legs, Jack. Same logic. Use smaller bombs.
Tepid call,
BB.
which initially the Biden administration opposed, but they're now embracing, which is a so-called.
They're not even complaining about the people dying. They're like, you're losing the PR war by being so fucking vicious and brutal.
Can you comment on that term?
Well, first of all, if you listen to Nasrallah's speech, it was quite interesting.
And all the stuff that
he didn't really
Finkelstein's talking about, I think is worthwhile. Sometimes we get really caught up in the kind of barbarism and the brutal violence that Israel has been unleashing over the last couple of weeks, and it activates some, I think, uncomfortable thoughts for some of us. But I do think we all do need to keep in mind, for the people that were like wanting Nasrallah or Hezbollah to go even further, to just go full on, jump right in and open up another front in this war, for Iran to get involved. I sometimes think that, like, in these moments where we allow our emotions to kind of guide our response to it, sometimes we're not really thinking through like what that is going to mean and what it's going to look like, so I appreciate the kind of like the more nuanced stance he took on that to remind us of that.
That much on Israel. The largest part of the speech.
Hey, you're hurting my re-election chances, Jack. We don't care. They want Trump back.
Describe what's going on as a U.S.
That's what all the full support that Biden's given them. That's where it's going to go. They're going to help get Trump elected.
There's a tendency in the Arab Muslim world, as well as among elements on the left, to focus or hyper-focus on the Israeli element to the exclusion of the American element. And I know that Nasrallah has met with Professor Chomsky on occasion, and it was striking to me that he had kind of internalized or accepted the Chomsky conception that the evildoer is not located in Jerusalem, the evildoer is located in the United States.
And Chomsky encouraged him to try to reach U.S. public opinion, right?
Well, and that's the thing, Amazing Bird Show. Like, it's not like they can support it anymore. But it just shows how completely foolish. Biden's only doing it because he's a hardcore, true believing Zionist extremist himself. Like, you would think that the open fact that the Israeli government has totally defied them on so many occasions with the settlements, without whatever little minor criticisms that they have, the fact that they openly support his opponent, you'd think maybe the Biden administration might like try to push back against that, maybe try to have a different position, try like maybe not support the foreign government that's openly undermining everything you do and is openly supporting your political opponent. Maybe that would be something that you could do in that situation, is actually defy them somehow or limit their ability to do what they're doing. Instead, they're just giving them everything that they want. It's an unbelievably cucked way of engaging in this kind of like geopolitical maneuvering. You're openly supporting the genocidal fucking corrupt gangsters who are not even popular in Israel, to say nothing of America. Netanyahu and his government, not even popular in Israel, openly supporting Biden's opponent, and they're still like, whatever you want, here you go. Can you just use smaller bombs? No? Okay, well, we asked. It's pathetic. It's not only monstrous, but it's just sad and pathetic as well. That this country that's openly undermining everything that they do, and they still just get whatever they want. It's embarrassing.
That wouldn't have been a particularly wise piece of advice. The likelihood of citing this problem reaching American public opinion, I would say, is about roughly the same as the likelihood that I'll get a tenure-track job at this point in my life. In any event, for all of the theatrics, I think there are 2 points. Number one, what happened on October 7th was a disaster for the United States as well. Israel is the pillar of the U.S. policy in the Middle East. And the expectation was, for example, that Saudi Arabia would enter into alliance with the U.S. and that the U.S. and Israel would be there should there be a conflict between
It's wild that it's 1 year out from the election.
Iranians. Well, October 7th was a wake-up call for the Saudis, namely, well, how much should we be investing in Israel, pulling our chestnuts out of the fire if there's a conflict with Iran? So the U.S. was as committed from the point of view of its own interests. The U.S. was as committed and is as committed to restoring Israel's deterrence capacity. Now, all of this talk about Anthony Blinken wanting a humanitarian pause and the
I'm really interested about that as well. Emperor's New Clothes.
Totally.
Very keen to see how much of the damage will be revealed to have been done by the IDF against themselves and their own civilians. I imagine that information is not going to be available in the Gal Gadot Hamas atrocity porn propaganda film that she's promoting. I imagine that information will not be available. Yeah, I mean, people are piecing it together. A lot of the information has come out on Israeli state media. It's not even some kind of big conspiracy. Like we were saying, and they're still doing this whole thing about all the innocent civilians, the 1,400 innocent civilians that were killed indiscriminately. How many of those people were killed by the IDF, and how many of the people that were killed were in the IDF and were not, in fact, innocent civilians at all, but are occupying soldiers that are part of this genocidal, violent army that has been murdering people with total impunity for years. That's definitionally not an innocent civilian. And like I keep saying, in case anyone is looking at this stuff to get mad at me over whatever, like I keep saying, that's not to say that innocent people didn't die or that Hamas didn't do bad things or whoever else. But at the very least, like we keep saying, the idea that what happened on the 7th was just a one-sided, unprovoked orgy of indiscriminate violence and sexual assault towards innocent civilians on the part of Hamas is not accurate. And that's the way it's been framed by the Israelis, by the Zionists. Since that time, that's how it's been used to try and stifle this whole protest movement, to contribute to this McCarthyist wave that we're seeing. And that is not accurate.
Ridiculous. It's absurd. Israel suffered such a blow on October 7th. The United States sent 2 aircraft carriers.
Gal Gadot is the only actress I can think of where it sounds more insulting to say her name correctly than the way everyone thinks it's pronounced. And enough champagne to fill the Nile. As we say, a genocide denial is not just a river in Egypt. Gal Gadot.
In the region, Biden promised them
their bombs even killed the woman they said was assaulted. We don't even know what happened with her because they basically. So first of all, she was assaulted and paraded around on trucks and dragged through the streets. That was the initial claim. which certain other streamers said specifically something that I support, which is fucking preposterous. Then it was revealed that she was alive, and then Israel said, oh, she's dead because we found like a single skull fragment and instantly gave it to the CSI team to determine that it was hers. Yeah, a random skull fragment. Like, what the fuck? So who knows what is going on with that? Yeah, if she is dead, though, at this point, it was going to be because of a result of this bombing campaign perpetrated by Israel. She's shifting through different realities like a Marvel movie. It's a good thing a CBS procedural was nearby to do a forensic montage, yeah. Okay, so Decatune, her family did say that she died in the hospital? Who knows? Open and shut case, Johnson.
18 billion or 14 billion dollars. And you're telling me that Biden couldn't say to the Israelis, humanitarian pause now. Israel wasn't in a position to say no. It's just theatrics so the U.S. can pretend that it's sensitive to the humanitarian issue, and Prime Minister Netanyahu can pretend that he's a strong man standing up to the United States. In this particular instance, what the U.S. says goes. And if there isn't a humanitarian pause, let alone a ceasefire, that's because that's what the U.S. wants. Now, it can be argued that Biden's concerns are twofold. One, restoring the deterrence capacity of the pillar of our policy, our military posture in the Middle East. And two, I do think there's an issue of those Jewish donors and that big Jewish billionaire money for the election. I think part of it was a photo op with the election in mind. And one of the revealing things about what's happened the last month is to watch how that billionaire money works. So, if I can...
Biden's just stalling for time until he can openly acknowledge Israel's gone too far. That ship has sailed. It's too late for that.
When I was denied tenure in 2007...
It is way too late for that.
It was pretty obvious to me. DePaul is a big university. It's the major real estate developer in Chicago. There are people on the board of trustees. They don't want me there. And they just say to the president, well, you know, I hear this guy Finkelstein is coming up for tenure. He's not going to get tenure, is he? And that's how it works. That's how it used to work. It's all done behind the scenes, and it's all done with an element of subtlety. But this past month has been quite extraordinary, because if you watch what's going on in the college campuses, the Jewish billionaire class is just very forthright. And the numbers are staggering, at least from my point of view in Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn. One billionaire says, if you don't condemn what happened on October 7th, I'm taking back $100 million. I'm sure Colin appreciates, now that he shows me his new office, $100 million is money. Another one says at the Wharton School, you don't condemn, Wharton School is of the University of Pennsylvania, you don't condemn what happened, we're taking back $50 million. And there's no, as I said, no behind the scenes maneuvering. This is in your face. And now you multiply that number by 10-fold or 100-fold, and that's the kind of money you're talking about in the presidential election. So there's been, for Biden, I'm quite certain that was a consideration when he went over and hugged the teary-eyed Prime Minister Netanyahu, and then all
one of the most disgraceful things that I've seen.
Cameras flashed for the money for the donors. But I would not say. I would say that is an element, and one should not trivialize that element, as we now see as it's being played out in our major and elite universities. It's a significant element. But I don't think it's the main one. The main one was the collapse of one of the pillars of U.S. policy in the region. I'll just say an amusing note, not amusing, nothing's amusing about this thing, but it's an ironic note. What happened in the college campuses was, in the current woke climate, all of the colleges had to take a stand on George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter. So they all took the stand condemning racism, and wasn't it horrible what happened?
But that's not a bad thing, though, Norman.
So
that they were forced to acknowledge
came
that.
Along the Ukraine war, and the cultural institutions
Norm.
started to take a stand on that.
Don't do it, Norm.
So
No.
For example, to Lincoln Center, there was a wall just covered with pictures of musicians attached to Lincoln Center who were of Ukrainian descent. So now, along comes the Jewish billionaire class, and with a certain amount of legitimacy, they said, if you condemn George Floyd, and you condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine, then why aren't you condemning what happened on October 7th? And one has to acknowledge there's a certain amount of consistency to that. But then the problem arose. No. They were told, condemn or else. Very clear. Condemn or else, we're taking back our money. But then the problem arose. Okay, you condemned what happened on October 7th.
If you condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine, you should condemn Israel, logically.
What happened in October 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, and so forth in Gaza. So now the university presidents are presented with what you might be called being caught between a rock and a hard place. If we don't condemn what happened on October 7th, they take back the money. But if we condemn what happened on the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, they're going to take back the money anyway. So what do? Well, that's one good reason not to become a college president.
Anyway, as usual, a lot of great insight and analysis that I'm interested in. Of course, Normie veers off into this like anti-woke direction. Part of it is somewhat understandable considering he's someone who has actually legitimately been like canceled. But I think his like, it's been weird over the last couple of years with him as he's kind of veered into that more crankish territory about that. And I think making a connection there that he's talking about something legitimate, but then framing it in this like woke climate situation, which I think is like less insightful than some of his other analyses that we see. I think he's confused and tries to make the argument for a zeitgeist, but then the lead paint kicks into overdrive. Yeah. He's just an old guy. He's an old guy. Like I said, he's one of the people that can actually complain about cancel culture, considering he did literally get canceled, and was silenced for this kind of advocacy that he does. But he wasn't silenced by like pro-trans college students, though. Like that actually had nothing to do with it. And in fact, most trans people that I know anyways are fully in support of like decolonization, support Palestine, you know, and have radical and empathetic and good political tendencies, as far as I know. Yeah, that is important to point out, Dr. Maggot. Yeah, that it's not like the cancel culture the way that is described. I'm gonna go pretty soon, folks. I'm gonna go pick up my kid from school. It is McDonald's Wednesday. I should listen to the Drew Nunn interview. I haven't listened to that in quite a while, Dave, but probably should give it a listen. I've got to go pick up my kid pretty school, folks. Got more than 5 minutes of Rob today. Hell yeah, Emperor's New Clothes. We love it. If you can, folks, if you can, please support TRRS. As you know, the only way that I am able to do this show each and every day is through the incredible generosity of the community members. And I'm a mere 22 subs away from the goal for today. So if you can, please subscribe. I know about McDonald's, folks. I'm sorry. My kid has fucked up eating patterns, and he gets in severe routines when it comes to this, and they put addictive chemicals in it.
Count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob.
I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best here. Okay. I wouldn't go if it were not for him. He likes those Happy Meals, though. I am doing my best. I am doing my best here. Thank you, Comrade Bushy, for the gifted sub. And now a mere 21 subs to go. I would love to nationalize like we talked about this earlier. I would love to nationalize both the McNuggets. I would like to nationalize the Diet Coke formula. There's a lot of stuff that I'd like to nationalize, okay? And after the revolution, we will do that. Oh wait, no, this is not the one I want. This is not the one I want. There we go. So yeah, folks, as I was saying, the only way that I'm able to do this show each and every day is if people support the program. People are very, very generous in their support of the work that I do, and I really appreciate that a lot. The only way that I'm able to continue doing this program each and every day is if the little number at the bottom of the screen goes up. So if you can, folks, please support the show. It is $5 per month. It's completely free of charge with an Amazon Prime account, which you can easily convert to a Twitch Prime sub. You can join the community. You can support the work that I do. You can support the community. You can become a member of the Friendship Triangle system. That's Twitch's only two-dimensional triangle-shaped friendship access and trickle-down clout tiered reward system. Sean, thank you very much for the gifted sub. I appreciate it. Thank you, Sean. A mere 20 subs away from the goal. So if there's anyone watching, if my commentary on this subject or any other subject has been valuable to you, please support the work that I do on here. You can do that by subscribing to this program. It's very helpful. It's very helpful. It's the only way that I'm able to keep doing this. It's the only way that this community continues to exist. That's right. Mark Ciavelli. It's two-dimensional. It's two-dimensional and triangle-shaped.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Fernan Talk. Thank you for the 14 months of Prime. I appreciate that. Yeah, like I've been saying, folks, doing this kind of commentary, it's been very helpful for me to be able to come on here and break this stuff down with everybody over the last couple of weeks. I hope it's been helpful for you as well.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through
and the
all
only
this.
way that this show is able to stay on the air, the only way that I'm able to do that is through the extreme generosity of this community. Thank you, Emperor's New Clothes, for the gifted sub as well. That's very, very nice of you. Thank you. And we are close to a hype train now. And now a mere 18 subs away from the goal. I've been really trying not to push this too hard. People have been very, very generous supporting this program. I've been leaving this to the end because I don't want to take time out from doing this kind of commentary to try and sell Twitch subscriptions so Jeff Bezos can buy build another extension on his mansion with another 20 bathrooms because he's got a weird fetish over how much people are allowed to pee and where, and he loves controlling people's pee. I don't know what's with this guy. He's a weird guy. I don't totally understand it. He is a big P fan. I don't know. Kind of a weird, creepy guy, honestly. He looks so normal and not weird, though, especially when he's munching on a big, lizard. Iguana. Maybe the community can get Jeff Bezos to the piss badge together. You'd think he would fit in here, wouldn't he? With the shimmering golden 2-year badge. Sean. We just love piss. I don't know. Was it a joke? Was it a joke, really? I don't know about that. So a mere minor, measly 18 subs away from the goal, folks. Would anyone else like to support TRRS? Who are the brave heroes that are going to step up today? The heroic heroes that are going to support the work that I do on here and support this show and allow me to continue to do this kind of coverage and commentary and have the same conversations that we've been having over the last couple of weeks on this platform.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Clobocop, for the gifted sub and for all the support this month. Clobocop still number 1 in the gift sub rankings. Although Sunny Sola is number 3 at 8. So there's an opportunity right now for someone to step up and surpass Sunny Sola as number 3 for gifted subs for this month. That's kind of exciting. Thanks, Clobocop. And not only, if you do subscribe to this program, not only does it help me and help out the community and allow me to continue doing this show, you also get some of the very best tiny little images. Some of the very, very best tiny little images on the entire platform, which is really worth the subscription in and of itself.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Crackety Kraken, for the gifted sub. Really appreciate that, Crackety Kraken. Thank you. And thank you, folks, for tolerating these segments on the show when I try to make the number go up. I appreciate it. As I often say, it's the part of doing this show that I would probably, if it was up to me, would not probably continue to do. But it's unfortunately a necessary aspect of continuing to do this program. It's Decadude's favorite part. Everyone loves to just see me sweat at the end of the show. See me sweat a little bit. Only 16 subs to go. Only 16 subs away, folks. It's within reach. Who are the brave heroes that are going to step up?
You can count on me
and support
have good
this
old Rob
program.
to talk you through all this.
I condemn the non-subscribers.
Thank you, Relic, for 19 months of Prime. Getting pretty close to the 24-month badge yourself, Relic. Thank you for that. And they should be condemned, you know? But again, if you're a lurker, if you're someone that just joined the community recently, if you just tuned in, if the algorithm brought you here, I don't know how much work the algorithm actually does to deliver this content to people. But if you've been lurking today, if you're a non-subscribed member and you want to be part of the community and want to support this show totally free with an Amazon Prime account, or with a donation of 5 subs or above, you can instantly rocket right up to the elite tier of the Friendship Triangle system. Some people are a little intimidated by that. How do I become an elite member of this community? It must be a big investment. It must be a big time and financial
you can count
investment.
on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Not so. It's actually very easy. It's not complicated at all. Anon, thank you so much for the gifted sub. Thank you, Anon. Kate, that's totally all right. That's totally all right. I completely get that not everyone can support Twitch streamers with their income, you know? Completely get it. If that's something that you're able to do, if you've got disposable income, if you like this show and this content and this commentary and the conversations and the community, that was so many different... What's that when you have the same letter at the beginning of the list of words? That was so many in a row. If you do appreciate all that stuff, though, please subscribe. And we're now a mere 14 subs away.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Clobocop, again for the gifted sub to Kate. That's very kind of you. Alliteration. Do not believe it's a palindrome. And now we got a hype train really about ready to kick off. One gifted sub right now is going to kick this hype train off.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Fart.
Thank you, Bleep Lord. Thank you, Bleep Lord, for the 500 friend coin. That's very kind of you. Thank you. So we got a hype train going, folks. 13 subs away from the goal and an opportunity to get some exclusive, cool emotes from Twitch for being part of this hype train. In case you didn't already have a reason to subscribe or support this content. And 13 subs to go. That's totally in reach. I can almost taste it. A few generous gifters could come through and support this community and make the number go up and become into the good number. They sent Mayor Pete to Kiev. Hasn't Ukraine been through enough? Jeez. Ukraine has been through enough. Now they got to deal with this as well. Very unfortunate. That's going to be an interesting balancing act that we're going to see on the part of the Biden administration over the next couple of weeks. And once it's trying to manage expectations downward now for all the people that they've been telling they were going to back to the hilt and they were going to get all their territory back and they're going to get Crimea back and all this stuff. And now you're going to have to sell. What about if you don't even need those eastern regions? You don't even need those. New Ukraine 2.0. We're cutting off all the dead weight. We're going to give that dead weight over to Putin. We're saddling him with all these new regions. Now it's his problem, huh? New Ukraine 2.0, it's slimmed down. Extremely hardcore Ukraine, exactly. It's more efficient. It's more efficient this way. No, that's going to be interesting. I'm sure that's going to go over very well. Russia gators are going to get very confused. Exactly. It's like, this is how we win. Putin fell right into our trap. Now he has to expand into these new territories. One minute and 50 left in this hype train, folks. Do we hear level 2? Or level 3, excuse me? Do we hear level 3? A few more gifted subs not only will get us closer to the goal for today, but will also keep this hype train going and unlock even more cool and exciting exclusive new hype train emotes. Wow. Wow, doesn't that sound great? No, it's not a good... They're not going to get a good deal. They're not going to get the deal that was on the table 2 years ago. It's going to be interesting to see them trying to, like, balance that. How about those sanctions, though? Those really worked very well. What a humiliation for the Empire. What an absolute humiliation. They were like 50 billion in debt to Russia beforehand, but I bet that's not going to be paid. Well, now how in debt are they going to be to like NATO? I keep thinking about that video yesterday. It was haunting. Just give us some credit. Just give us some credit. Crazy. I saw this amazing take as well. I don't want to defend Aaron Bastani too well. Aaron Bastani has said some things that I like and I think are okay, but sometimes I find kind of frustrating. But this is so funny too, because Aaron was complaining about was making fun of that whole clip as well. And then this guy actually has the audacity to say they're so mad at him for actually being the popular anti-colonial resistance leader. They role play for Patreon subs. And again, this is not in defense of Novara, who I have some issues with, even if they might do some coverage that I think is pretty decent. The popular anti-colonial resistance leader, Zelensky, anti-colonial. Like, words just have no meaning anymore. Anti-colonial is when you're a pawn of NATO and you sell out your own country to hopefully become a U.S. client state and wreck your entire country in the process and lose like a big portion of your land. That's what it is to be anti-colonial, when you're a lapdog of Western imperialism. You sell out your own country to become a NATO base and get wrecked in the process, despite the assurances from your NATO backers that it's not going to happen. And that's what it is to be a popular anti-colonial resistance leader. Yeah, anti-colonial like Syngman Rhee, exactly. Absolutely ridiculous. It's so sinister, the use of these like social justice-y concepts like anti-colonialism and anti-Semitism and the language of human rights, how this is used to justify and whitewash imperialism. Lived experience, yeah. It's so sinister, isn't it? It's so dark in my apartment now. Well, folks, we made a bunch of progress, and I'm happy to report after the last few minutes of progress, we are now... Are you sitting down, folks? Are you sitting down here? We're a mere 13 subs away from the goal. I know, I'm surprised as well. But we're a mere 13 subs away. So, if you can, if anyone out there watching is capable of doing so, please support TRRS. Help me reach my goal for today. Help keep this content on the air. Help support the work that I do. Only a few brave and generous heroes could step up and drag my tired ass across the finish line for today. Only a few brave sub-gifters could step up and support this program. Wouldn't that be wonderful? I think that Zelensky clip really hits home for Rob. It's like he was
You can
asking
count
for
on
subs.
me
It's
and
true.
have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Global Cup, thanks for another gifted sub. You've been very kind lately. I really appreciate it. Global Cup running away with the monthly sub gift award. I really appreciate it, Global Cup. Thank you. And now a mere minor, measly 12 subs away. And you can just give credit if you can't gift a sub. You can just give me some credit. You can transfer me some javelin missiles even. I'll take some of those. If you can't afford a sub, I will accept payment in Javelin missiles as well. Just give me a line of credit for streaming. That's exactly right. Give the money's on credit. God, it's so bad. I'm just looking at who to raid here. I thought you meant credit like compliments. Well, I can't do much with that. You know, I appreciate the compliments, but when I try to talk to my landlord and say, "Hey, can I pay rent in compliments this month?" and they're low and they're not into that. They can't. They're like, "We don't accept. That's not legal currency."
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Comrade Timmy, for the gifted sub. Second gifted sub in the channel from Comrade Timmy. Thank you, Timmy. I appreciate that. He was really, we believe in nothing Lebowski, delivery-wise. It's true, he is like a Coen Brothers character at this point. Maybe I am just bad at compliments. I don't know, it's possible. Timmy, fast approaching the elite tier, it's true. Do we know James from the internet?
Not banned. It's not banned in warfare, but the use of it over civilian areas is banned. White phosphorus itself, legitimately speaking, is not banned. But white phosphorus use over civilian areas is considered a war crime.
I don't follow him. I'm just trying to find someone different to raid. There's not a lot of people. Yeah, that was a funny thing to just immediately tune into. I'm sure in context, maybe that made more sense, but well, that'll do it for the day, folks. As always, thank you very much for watching the show and supporting the show.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Crackety Kraken, thanks for a gifted sub. I appreciate the support, Crackety Kraken. Thank you. Thank you, folks. I appreciate you. I will be back tomorrow. It's so dark right now. It's so dark in here. It's so bizarre. I hate it. And we got movie night tonight. Is it Starship Troopers tonight? Yeah. Okay. Starship Troopers tonight. Was it 9:15? Hell yeah. Take care, folks.